Chapter 71. You should keep your promise now, right? An expert like you will definitely keep your word, right? Mordred stared at Dustless with a burning gaze. He looked a little nervous, as if afraid that Dustless would go back on his word. He had already knelt down. If this guy still went back on his word, wouldn't he suffer a huge loss? Dustless's mouth twitched. He didn't know how to reply. At first, he was just mocking Mordred. After all, dragons like Mordred thought highly of themselves. Every time he opened his mouth, he would call himself a great dragon, and every time he closed his mouth, he would call himself the noblest dragon. He was simply a racist. In his eyes, all other races were trash, so he would definitely value his own dignity. But who would have thought, fine, fine. I'll just materialize and let you attack me once. In the end, Dustless compromised. Looking at this guy's pitiful look, he would give him a chance to turn things around. Ha ha ha. Mordred immediately stood up and shouted excitedly, even the gods won't be able to save you this time. I will slap you into pieces. Just wait for your death. This guy is really an idiot. He actually took the initiative to throw away his life. No one else is as stupid as him. Mordred sneered in his heart. He had already labeled Dustless as a dead man. Come on, use your full strength. Dustless hooked his finger. His expression was still as lazy as before. He didn't care at all. Go to hell. Mordred flashed and attacked. This guy was about to die, but he still acted so carelessly. Was he looking down on him? Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Mordred's sharp claws descended from the sky, slapping towards Dustless's head. Kaboom! This time, it clearly hit Dustless's head. After a loud bang, Mordred's frightening forelimbs stopped above Dustless's head. But, this doesn't feel right. How is this possible? The atmosphere was oppressive for a while. Mordred screamed as if she had seen a ghost. Her body suddenly retreated as if she had been frightened. There was no doubt that his forelimbs had landed on Dustless's head, and those cold gleaming claws had also accurately struck Dustless. However, contrary to what he had imagined, Dustless's head was not torn off. Creak! An unforgettable pain shot through his body. Mordred shuddered. He knew something was wrong. He looked down and saw that the sharp claws had been cut in half. Why is this bastard's head so hard? After regaining his senses, Mordred roared in anger. Dustless's head wasn't human at all. It was even harder than a meteorite. Even his claws had been broken. Serves you right. How childish. Do you think you can kill me just because you've removed your elemental transformation? You're too naive. In addition to the elemental transformation, I also have armament hockey. Just now, Dustless used armament hockey to harden his skin, so even if he was hit by a claw, he was fine, and he didn't even feel a little pain. Armament hockey. Why haven't I heard of this defensive magic before? Mordred's face was black as he roared unwillingly. Magic, you idiot. Dustless shook his head. At this time, he was too lazy to explain. He said impatiently, if you don't have a big move, I will kill you now. Of course I have a big move. Mordred completely abandoned the dignity of a strong man. He once again flew in front of Dustless, and his legs gradually bent down again. Damn it, seeing this scene, Dustless's head was full of black lines. Does this bastard want to kneel down and ask him to go easy on him? Put on. Sure enough, just like before, Mordred knelt down shamelessly and said very seriously, I'm kneeling down for you again. Don't use this armament hockey. Are you an idiot? Dustless looked at Mordred like a fool. Is this guy going to kneel down after seeing him release a move and then ask him not to use it? It's a pity. Dustless's face was indifferent as he refused. There is only one chance for a pie to fall from the sky. Even if you kneel down and kowtow now, it's useless. Boz. After that, Dustless's hand flashed with a bright light, and the ray of light was aimed at Mordred's body. This attack was extremely hot, especially Mordred, who was locked on. Even if it hadn't hit him, he felt that his body was going to burn. But in his heart, at the moment, it was like falling into an ice cave, full of despair. He kept shouting in his heart, I must not be hit, or it's really over. This blow made Mordred see the Grim Reaper in a trance. Get out of Yak's body yourself, or do you want me to do it myself? The light in Dustless's hand suddenly went out, and he asked faintly. His behavior was very unusual. This is... Mordred was stunned. He was even prepared to die. Who would have thought that this guy would suddenly stop? Oh. Yes. No wonder this guy didn't dare to act rashly. I forgot about this. Suddenly thinking of something, Mordred's mouth made a burst of evil laughter, and he suddenly realized that he also held the strongest trump card. Ha ha ha. You must not dare to do it. Mordred raised his head and puffed out his chest, his dragon eyes staring arrogantly at Dustless, and said leisurely, I am occupying that girl's body. If you kill me, your fall will die too. The person Mordred was talking about was definitely Yak. This was indeed a tricky situation, but, are you still a dragon? How can you be so ignorant? How can you be so ignorant? Dustless looked at Mordred mockingly, then raised a finger. So what if you're hiding in Yak's body? I have 100 ways to turn you into ashes. Chapter 72. Who doesn't know how to brag? Mordred was still in disbelief and mocked, if you could really do it, you would have killed me long ago. It's useless to say more. Dustless sighed. There were some things that could not be explained when encountering such a muscular idiot. Actually, he was just testing the waters. If Mordred's soul had merged with Yak's soul, he would not have dared to make a move. If he killed Mordred, Yak would also die. If the soul was destroyed, even the outer path of reincarnation would not be able to revive. However, it was different now. After testing the waters, Dustless was almost certain that Mordred had only taken over Yak's body. Their souls had not merged. In other words, even if this body was destroyed, as long as Yak's soul was intact, she could still be revived even if she died. After testing the waters, Dustless realized that Yak's moves that belonged to the Holy Dragon royal family did not appear on Mordred's body. This guy had been using the moves of the Pluto dragon since the beginning. Was the Holy Dragon royal family too weak? Obviously not. Dustless concluded that this guy had only taken over Yak's body. If the soul had merged, he should be able to use Yak's moves. Since the soul had not merged, there was no need to hold back. 10,000 mammoth heavens beckoning. Dustless suddenly grabbed Mordred with one hand. This guy's body was suddenly out of control. His expression was extremely terrified. The feeling of losing control of his body and being controlled by the enemy made Mordred extremely uncomfortable. Damn it! Sensing that his body was flying towards Dustless, Mordred was shocked. Is this gravity? I have such a huge body. How can you just grab me like that? Roar! Mordred roared loudly and flapped his wings with all his might. Storms swept out continuously as he tried to break free from the 10,000 mammoth heavens beckoning. However, it was useless. No matter what, his huge body was still quickly approaching Dustless. Even if he used all his strength, he could not pull away from him. I'll fight you to the death. In the end, Mordred gave up struggling. Instead, he turned into a black streak of light and rushed towards Dustless. He knew that he couldn't break free with his strength, so he might as well give it a try. Ao ao ao. Mordred opened her mouth wide and bit towards Dustless. However, The moment the sharp fangs were about to devour Dustless, a smirk appeared on the latter's face, and a force that was completely opposite to gravity erupted. Shinra Tensei. Bang bang bang. A strong repulsive force hit Dustless head-on, and the fangs, which were as thick as an arm, shattered before they could swallow him. Not only were his front teeth broken, but Mordred's huge body was also sent flying by the repulsive force. Boom boom boom. After tumbling a dozen times in the air, Mordred's mountain-like body fell heavily onto the ground. He immediately spat out a mouthful of blood in pain, and the thick scales on his body were shattered. Dustless seemed to have done it on purpose. When he landed, his head was facing downwards. He saw stars and almost fainted. You bastard, ah! Mordred was in extreme pain. His eyes were wide open. How dare that bastard Dustless attack him? And how could he be so cruel? This body was almost falling apart. Although Mordred's soul controlled this body, in the end, this body was still Yak's. Dustless's attack almost destroyed this body. Wasn't he afraid of killing Yak? How's this move? You shouldn't be able to move now, right? Dustless walked over as if he was taking a stroll in the park. There was a faint smile on his face. Mordred wanted to stand up and fight, but his body was already falling apart. He had no strength to fight, and could not even stand up. Isn't this child your woman? You want to kill her? Mordred asked with blood in his mouth. She's not dead yet. Wu Qin was quite calm and said indifferently, I'm very confident in my strength. Besides, it's good to teach Aiku a lesson this time, so she won't be caught again. People will only grow if they learn a lesson, even if this lesson is a little painful. If you don't have any last words, I'll send you to your death. Dustless grabbed the body with one hand. At the same time, his eyes turned into Rinnegan. Sure enough, there are two souls. After carefully sensing, Dustless smiled and mocked, You idiot, if you merged with Yak's soul, to be honest. It would be difficult to kill you. Unfortunately, you're busy showing off your strength. TSK, idiot. Get out of here. Dustless suddenly shouted. A black mist was forcefully extracted from Yak's body. This was Mordred's soul. Dustless, you bastard. With his plan ruined, Mordred's demon-like screams could be heard from within the black mist. It was extremely ear-piercing and filled with hatred. Everything was ruined because of this guy. Mordred wanted to swallow Dustless alive. Farewell. Dustless looked at the black mist and blinked his Rinnegan again. Amaterasu. A pitch-black flame appeared out of nowhere. No one could see where it came from, but it seemed to have a soul. It crawled to Mordred's soul and swallowed it on the spot. The area of the black mist shrank rapidly. Oh! Mordred screamed incessantly. After struggling for more than 10 seconds, he was killed by Dustless's overwhelming power. Yak also returned to her human form, but her body was naked. I'd better help this little girl put on her clothes quickly. Otherwise, when she wakes up, she'll definitely push the blame to me. Dustless knew Yak very well. She would definitely do something like this. Chapter 73. Strange. My body hurts. Just when Wuchen found Aiku's clothes and was about to help her put them on, the little girl murmured. She rubbed the corner of her eyes with her white and tender lotus-like arms. After a few breaths, she opened her pair of confused eyes. The first thing she saw was Dustless, who was right in front of her. Ah! The young girl suddenly screamed, as if she had received a great shock. You did this to me. Yak's body curled up. Looking at the clothes in Dustless's hands, she was furious. Yep, that's right. Although she didn't see the whole process, she knew that he took off her clothes. Damn. Good things don't come true, but bad things do. Dustless rubbed his head in confusion. It seemed that the more worried something was, the faster it came. That Mordred took over your body. Now that I killed him, you became like this. As for what I did just now, I was just helping you put on your clothes. Although Yak didn't believe him, Dustless still told her the truth. You really didn't do anything bad. Yak fiercely snatched the clothes from Dustless's hands. What are you talking about? Dustless purposely asked with a wretched expression. Humph. You know it yourself. After putting on the clothes, Yak stood up. In fact, even though her body was taken over, she could still feel the changes in the outside world. Dustless was telling the truth. He really didn't do anything to her. But a woman's mind was often very complicated. This guy. He had such a good opportunity just now, but he didn't do anything to me. Yak glared at Dustless unhappily. She couldn't help but wonder if her charm wasn't enough. Am I not good enough for you? Yak suddenly asked. Why do you say that? Dustless stared at Yak strangely. Then he touched his chin and looked at her seriously. He smiled and said, You're very cute. Of course. Hearing this, Aika beamed with joy. Her small face was rosy, and there was a hint of pink in her fair complexion. She was very lovable. He's just a little unreasonable. Dustless suddenly added another sentence. Yak's pretty face immediately twitched, and she said very unhappily, No one will treat you as a mute if you speak less. Seriously. I can't even tell the truth. Dustless shrugged. At the same time, he looked at the distant sky and saw several skeletal dragons flying over. He couldn't help but think to himself, It seems that the matter isn't settled yet. Mordred, the main culprit, was already dead. But the appearance of the skeletal dragon, what did this mean? The enemy had not been completely wiped out. The rest should be the Magicite Society, right? I remember his name was Gregory Savonarola. Dustless muttered in his heart. Actually, this fellow had another name. He was Yabong de Palma, Yashur Blake's biological father. Since your son is dead, you as his father should also die. Wouldn't it be great if I let you two go to the underworld to continue your fate? Dustless's eyes emitted a cold light. Just looking at his eyes made him feel as if his eyes were being pricked by needles. It was extremely painful. Hey, hey, hey. Yak, who was standing at the side, was instantly unhappy. Looking at Dustless's absent-minded look, she stomped her feet and said angrily, Are you kidding me? How dare you ignore me? You don't even appreciate such a cute dragon like me. How dare you ignore me? Aika jumped up and down as if she had been greatly insulted. Wu Chen was speechless upon hearing this. This chick's narcissism was really not a bluff. It was estimated that one could not find a second person like her in the whole world. After this trivial matter is settled, I'll take a good look at you. After saying that, Dustless walked toward the skeletal dragons in the distance. The chaos lasted for about a few hours. After Dustless annihilated the skeletal dragons, a large number of members of an unknown organization appeared. These people launched an attack on the kingdom of Lorea, but it was useless. Dustless single-handedly overthrew them all. After investigation, it was found that these mysterious people were from the Magitech Association. Their boss, Gregory Savonarola, was later killed by Dustless. The palace of Lorea was thus reduced to ruins. In the blink of an eye, 7 days had passed. This country welcomed a new king. In the previous war, the old king was unfortunately killed and did not leave a will in time. According to the method of succession, the first princess, Veronica, should inherit the throne. However, she was not interested in the throne. For someone like her who liked to fight, the battlefield was undoubtedly more suitable. Therefore, she decisively rejected the throne and gave it to Sylvia. The person who ascended the throne today was Princess Sylvia. No, she was now Queen Sylvia. Oh, what a great day. Sylvia is crowned king today. Even the heavens are giving her face. After the original palace was destroyed, they had to find another palace to replace it for the time being. Dustless and the others stood at the highest point of the palace. There were no clouds in the sky today. The breeze was nice, and the sun was not dry. It was a rare sunny day. The coronation of a king had to go through a lot of red tape. After putting on the crown and officially becoming the queen, there was still a grand parade. The process was rather troublesome. Today, the huge capital was packed with people. Everywhere was packed. Everyone wanted to see the new king's face with their own eyes. Seriously. That Sylvia, as always, is delaying things. Is it so hard to see her for the last time? Veronica looked up and her gaze fell on the exit of the new palace. She waited for a long time but did not see Sylvia in person. In about an hour, Dustless and the others would leave. Veronica wanted to see her sister's face when she was crowned king as a memento. Other than that, there was also Lebecca, Yak, and Luca. They had nothing to worry about, and they didn't have any obsessions before leaving. Only Veronica couldn't let go of Sylvia. But what made her anxious was that after waiting for a long time, the parade ceremony hadn't started yet. It's about to start. Dustless's observation hockey was revealed. At the gate of the new palace, there were already many teams, decorated with lanterns and streamers, and all kinds of dragon carriages. Creak. About a few minutes later, the gate of the palace finally opened. The huge capital immediately set off a salute, and Veronica's gaze immediately looked over. But, what's going on? After confirming that they did not see wrongly, several people cried out in surprise, including Dustless, who also frowned. Because the new king was not Sylvia but someone else. Wani-sama. Just as the few of them were feeling gloomy, a pleasant voice suddenly rang out. Sylvia. Veronica was too familiar with her sister's voice and recognized her at a glance. She didn't give up the position of king, did she? Dustless was secretly surprised. For him, kings and emperors were nothing, but for ordinary people, there was nothing more tempting than this. He was really surprised that Sylvia could give it up. It's boring without you in the new world, I decided to leave with you. The girl said sonorously, her beautiful eyes were like the blue sky, radiating a firm light. The end of this volume. Chapter 74. When Dustless chose to cooperate with him, Madara knew that Dustless was using him. He wanted to use his own hands to gain more power. Madara was very clear about this. Then why did you agree with him? That kind of ambitious brat may bite us in the future. Heiju said in a heavy tone. Obviously, Wuchen was not on the same side as them. So what? The cooperation itself is using each other. Madara said calmly. His eyes were as calm as stagnant water. If he chooses to cooperate, it means that we have what he needs. On the other hand, I choose to cooperate with him, and he also has what I need. But, White Setsu's mouth moved as he looked at the expressionless Madara and said, that guy is waiting for Madara-sama to fall. If he wants to rob the Rinnegan of the Bijou and Uzumaki Nagato, we can't resist him at all. Hearing this, Black Setsu nodded. This was the biggest problem. If Dustless chooses to tear his face after Madara's death, no one can stop him. He won't do that. Uchiha Madara shook his head and said firmly, I have told him everything about the origin of this world. Even if he turns against me in the future, it won't be after my death. I believe that he won't be such a short-sighted person. Madara was calm and powerful. He didn't believe that Dustless would take advantage of him after his death because it was completely unnecessary. And even if Dustless did take advantage of him, he had means to restrain Dustless. After I die, keep my body well. Don't let anyone know about it. If that kid dares to have the idea of the Rinnegan again, use the Edo Tensei to resurrect me. Murderous intent flashed in Madara's eyes as he said in a cold voice, I will teach you too the hand seals of the Edo Tensei. If Dustless thought that he had no means, it would be ridiculous. 5 days later, the sky was cloudless and the sun was shining brightly. Standing at the top of the mountain and overlooking the thousands of villages below, Dustless's handsome face had a faint smile. His body was surrounded by a layer of dreamy rainbow colors. What? This is the chakra of the immortal technique. It's not hard to control. Feeling the natural chakra in his body, Dustless's furrowed brows relaxed. The chakra in his body was only a drop in the ocean, but it was still acceptable. In fact, practicing senjutsu was not that difficult. The key was whether or not one could skillfully control the proportion of chakra. Ninjutsu relied on chakra in the body to activate. Ordinary chakra was obtained by mixing one's own physical energy and spiritual energy. Senjutsu chakra was formed by absorbing natural energy, the energy circulating in the world, and perfectly fusing it. In other words, to maintain the balance of the 3 types of chakra, only 1/3 of each type could be activated. If it was more than 1/3, it would be swallowed by the force of nature. If it was less than 1/3, it would not be able to activate Sage Mode. Although Dustless now said that he had refined chakra, it did not mean that he could enter Sage Mode. Moreover, he had only refined a small amount of chakra, which was equivalent to an intern who had just stepped into the Sage Mode. However, Dustless had to admit that chakra was indeed much more powerful than ordinary chakra. It was completely calculated in multiples, there was a qualitative gap, and it could give him a strong perception ability. These means are the trump cards to save my life in the future. I must not use them unless I have no other choice. Dustless gritted his teeth and decided in his heart. In this world where life was as cheap as grass, life-saving means were necessary. He was not the reincarnation of Indra. In the future, except for transplanting Rinnegan, he could not open Rinnegan at all. Looking up at the sky, looking at the distant planet countless miles away, he couldn't help but think. Rinnegan can't, but Tensigan can. There are not as harsh conditions as Rinnegan, but the power is no different from Rinnegan. It is also known as the supreme dojutsu that can destroy and create the world. Tensigan is divided into 2 types. The first is the fusion of a lot of Byakugan, and the second is the evolution of the Otsutsuki clan's Byakugan by snatching the Hyuga clan's Byakugan. However, if Wuchin charged to the moon alone, he would definitely be courting death and giving away his points. The Dijianmu tribe was not something that could be easily razed to the ground. Rinnegan can't, but Tensigan, I am determined to get. Clenching his fist, Dustless said firmly. In this world where bloodlines and eyes are the key, Mangekyo may be barely invincible in the early stage. But after the outbreak of the 4th Shinobi World War, it is impossible to be invincible in that chaotic period. For some monsters, not to mention Mangekyo, even eternal Mangekyo is useless. It is necessary to get a more high-tech eye to play with. Anyway, the value of the existence of the Otsutsuki clan is to guard the Geto Mazo. Now that the Geto Mazo has been lost, the Otsutsuki clan has lost the need to exist, but before that, looking down, Dustless's cheeks were full of frost, like a frozen corpse, his pupils emitted a gloomy gaze, without any human emotions, looking down at the village below, his body was full of murderous intent. Following Dustless's gaze, the size of the ninja village below was extremely large, even larger than Konoha. The climate was warm and cloudy, and in terms of geographical environment, it was not worse than Konoha. The village that Dustless looked down at was the cloud village of the Land of Lightning. Before the attack on the moon, let me borrow the Hachibi from your hidden cloud village, whoosh. The sharp sound of breaking the air resounded through the sky. The harsh roar was like a muffled thunder, resounding through the endless void. The golden blazing light directly evaporated the clouds into nothingness. Looking up, a straight beam of light was like a divine rainbow, falling from the sky. Unprecedented oppression and destruction suddenly came. Chapter 75. Boom boom boom. In the blink of an eye, the golden ray of light set off a violent explosion, and a destructive wave of air surged out. The impact was accompanied by the rough golden light, and everything that came into contact with it was turned into nothingness. In the center of the impact, a huge scorched pit could be clearly seen. Someone attacked us. Bastard, where did this thief come from? This is the Cloud Village. The Cloud Ninjas who were attacked instantly rushed in the direction of Dustless, and their faces were full of anger. Maybe because of the mountain area, or because of regular exercise, these Cloud Ninjas were all strong men with dark skin, and their faces were full of beast-like fierceness. Looking around, a large wave of ninjas came. Almost all of them had the same appearance. It's worthy of being the strongest ninja village. Just this face is enough to make children stop crying. The scarlet-red Three-Tomo turned, and looking at the black figure rushing from a few hundred meters away, he nodded slightly, and then his eyes suddenly narrowed, and his face was full of contempt. Whoosh! Dustless's body once again emitted a bright golden light, and in the next second, he disappeared. His speed was extremely fast, and it was impossible to catch him with the naked eye. The Cloud Ninjas were stunned, and they all shouted in their hearts, this unknown flash bastard in front of them took the wrong script, and speed was their strength. A group of idiots, courting death. When he was about 20 meters away from the Cloud Ninjas, the golden light suddenly stopped, and his hands quickly made hand seals, and the speed was so fast that it was dazzling. Fire release, great fire annihilation. A group of flames with a diameter of 20 meters swept across the heavens and the earth, coming straight at them in a majestic manner. The scorching waves of fire burned the heavens and the earth into a deep red color. It was abnormally hot and dry, crushing everything. Damn, is this an S-class fire release? Nonsense. Do you even need to ask? Can an ordinary fire escape technique cover such a large area? Water release ninjas, there are also earth release ninjas to resist. Looking at the endless sea of fire in front of them, the Cloud Ninjas were cold, and the fear in their eyes was difficult to hide. It was the first time they saw such a large-scale fire release. Water escape, great waterfall technique. Water release, violent water clash. Earth escape, earth wall. Earth escape, earth wall. The ninjas of the Cloud Hidden Village used all of their magical powers to resist Dustless's fire release and formed a high wall of earth with a length of 20 to 30 meters. You think you can block it just like that? How foolish. Yasekani no Magatama. Boom boom boom, tens of thousands of golden light bullets roared out, directly shattering the high wall formed by the earth escape technique into pieces. The wall collapsed into ruins with a loud bang. The situation was as if it was unstoppable. Swish! Swish! The Cloud Ninja behind the earthen wall naturally couldn't escape. He didn't even have time to react before he was instantly turned into a sieve. There were finger-sized holes all over his body. Speak, where is Hachibi Killer Bee? Dustless stepped on the neck of a Cloud Ninja who hadn't died yet. His face was full of murderous intent, and his eyes were like a beast that hadn't eaten for many years. I don't know. Poochie. With one foot, the Cloud Ninja's head was separated from his body. The scene was like purgatory, with a strong smell of blood and endless oppression. Bastard, you are looking for death. The angry voice suddenly resounded, the powerful roar was like a crazy beast, and the thick and powerful forearm grabbed Dustless. Mere dirt, you want to touch my body, ridiculous. Dustless turned his head, revealing half of his face, and then calmly turned his head. His body didn't move, he simply ignored the strong man who attacked him from behind. "You are looking for death." When the furious man saw that Wu Qin was looking down on him, his eyes were instantly filled with bright red. His whole body was covered with dark blue lightning. His whole body was like a flash bathed in thunder and lightning. His body was emitting ear-piercing electric light with crackling sounds. Right ton, thunder blade. The strong man raised his right arm and swept it towards Dustless. His strong and powerful wrist could smash a small mountain. It seemed that he wanted to separate Dustless's head. It showed how deep his hatred for Dustless was. "Didn't I say? Mere gravel can't touch me. You can't touch me now, and you can't touch me in the future." Dustless's face was indifferent, and he still didn't turn his head. "Bullshit." The brawny man roared again and again. His huge sturdy body leaped up and swept toward Wu Qin with great force. His imposing manner was like a rainbow piercing through the sun. "Go to hell." The right arm with dark blue lightning directly penetrated Dustless's body. What was intriguing was that Dustless's body only flashed with golden light, and there was no scene of separation of the head as the strong man expected. How is this possible? Looking at the strange scene in front of him, the hostility in the brawny man's eyes disappeared and was replaced by an unprecedented horror. Looking at Dustless, who was penetrated by his arm but was unscathed, his rough face was full of disbelief. This guy. Is it possible that he can ignore ninjutsu? Impossible, a person who can ignore ninjutsu is a god. The strong man instantly threw away the ridiculous idea in his mind, because it was ridiculous. A person who can ignore ninjutsu is definitely not a human. While the brawny man was deep in thought, Dustless suddenly disappeared. "Since you don't take the initiative to attack, then it's my turn, goodbye." The future fourth Reikage. When he reappeared, Dustless was already behind the strong man, and countless photons gathered on his leg, and without any pause, he kicked with all his strength. Lightspeed kick. Chakra activation. Almost at the same time as Dustless's words, A also timely defended against Dustless's attack. Chapter 76. This old fellow still hasn't given up. Dustless sneered. In the face of absolute strength, did Matthias think that he had any chance of winning? What a joke. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, Matthias' body whizzed out again. His speed was as fast as lightning, and he came and went without a trace. However, this time, he wasn't targeting Dustless, but, what are you trying to do? Sylvia looked at Matthias, who suddenly appeared in front of her. Her heart couldn't help but tremble. Looking at the evil smile in this guy's eyes, she felt even more uneasy. Get out of my way. Stay away from me, especially you. If you dare to take another step forward, I'll kill her. Matthias roared at Dustless. What a headache. Dustless rubbed his head. His eyes were cold. Don't think that you can live like this, useless trash. You'll know how stupid your choice is soon. Dustless directly ignored Matthias' threat. He said in a sinister voice, I changed my mind. I wanted to kill you previously, but now I want you to die without a complete corpse. Then I'll drag your little lover down with me even if I die. Matthias roared ferociously. A terrifying star power erupted from his palm, and he mercilessly choked Sylvia's neck. Once he caught her, she would definitely die. Sylvia also closed her eyes in despair. The distance between her and Matthias was too close. In front of the speed of light, you still want to kill. A calm but very warm voice rang in her ears. Sylvia was slightly stunned. When she opened her eyes again, a ray of light had already rushed out. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, that ray of light was simply too fast to be caught by the naked eye. It was so fast that it caught people off guard. Pfft, my hand! Matthias suddenly screamed. His voice was filled with extreme pain. Looking over, his right arm had already been cut off by Dustless before it could get close to Sylvia. "You damned bastard." Matthias' eyes were bloodshot. He looked at Dustless with extreme hatred. His eyes were filled with all kinds of complicated emotions. Awe, unwillingness, hatred, madness. In short, they were all contradictory. "You can die now." However, Dustless turned a blind eye to it and walked towards Matthias calmly. He had seen this kind of person many times. Matthias, who was severely injured, had limited speed. Soon, he was forced into a corner. "Let me go. I'm willing to be your slave in the future." Driven by his strong desire to survive, Matthias gave up his so-called dignity. "You want to join me?" Dustless sneered and said disdainfully, "People like you are born with a rotten life of betrayal. If you become stronger in the future, I'm afraid you will cut me into pieces. So, go to hell." After saying that, Dustless raised his lightsaber and aimed it at Matthias' head. "Wait." Just as Dustless's blade was about to chop down, a tender voice suddenly rang out under the night sky. "This is..." Dustless and Matthias looked over at the same time. A petite voice suddenly floated into their vision. "Fan Xinglu." Dustless was surprised. He couldn't figure out what this little brat's motive was. However, he was sure that she was not an enemy. Otherwise, he would have attacked just now. "Fan Xinglu, as long as you save me, I will obey all your orders. Don't forget that I am the supervisor of the Star Martial Arts ceremony." "I am very useful," Matthias said excitedly as if he had been injected with chicken blood. It was as if he had seen the opportunity to survive. "What a shameless thing." Dustless snorted. He was even more disgusted with Matthias. This guy simply had no bottom line. Just now, he said that he was willing to be his slave. In the blink of an eye, he became a fence-sitter when he saw that there was someone who could save him. Fan Xinglu ignored Matthias. She looked at Dustless with a burning gaze and asked, "Is the promise from before still valid?" "Promise." Hearing this, Dustless frowned. He lowered his head and thought for a while. Then, he came to a realization. Fan Xinglu had once wanted his blood. However, Dustless's condition was to exchange Matthias' head for his blood. He thought that this chick had already forgotten about it. He didn't expect her to still be thinking about it. "It's still valid." "I don't mind." Dustless shrugged casually. Then, he looked at Fan Xinglu meaningfully and said, "However, are you sure you want to do that? After drinking my blood, you will be my servant for the rest of your life. You will have to follow me wherever I go. This is equivalent to selling your body." Stinky hooligan. Sylvia and Ulysses snorted at the same time. When the word "selling your body" was mentioned, everyone would misunderstand. "What do you know?" Dustless rolled his eyes. At the same time, Fan Xinglu walked over. She looked at Matthias coldly. "I want your head," Fan Xinglu announced indifferently. Matthias was stunned. Then, he scolded angrily, "Fan Xinglu, you big idiot. Am I not better than?" Bam! Sadly, before Matthias could finish his sentence, Fan Xinglu's fist landed on his head. His head exploded like a watermelon. Bright red brain matter splattered all over the ground. How cruel! Looking at the headless corpse of Matthias, Dustless' lips moved. Just as he was about to say something, he suddenly felt a pain in his neck. "You're really fast." Fan Xinglu glanced helplessly at the petite figure hugging her. She hugged Dustless' neck tightly with both hands. Her two little baby teeth had already pierced into his neck, greedily drinking Dustless' blood. "This way, everything will be over." Looking up at the bright blue moon, Dustless was deep in thought. Now that all the trivial matters had been settled, and Claudia had also given up on participating in the Lion Heron Star Martial Arts Festival, there seemed to be nothing worth remembering. Chapter 77. After dealing with Matthias, Dustless and the rest went back. Fan Xinglu, the little loli, was also there. Dustless was also deeply helpless about this. After all, he had promised her at the beginning. Moreover, this little girl took the initiative to follow him. No one forced her. Yeah. What exactly is this? After returning to the palace, Fan Xinglu looked at herself in the mirror and said to herself foolishly, "What kind of eyes are these? They are actually white. So strange. I want the ability of armament hockey. I told you before that drinking my blood will give you a random ability. I don't know what I will get exactly." Wu Chen acted as if it had nothing to do with him, then he looked at Fan Xinglu's eyes and explained, "That's the Byakugan of the Hyuga clan. It's very suitable for people who use taijutsu." Byakugan. Fan Xinglu was confused, then looked at Dustless blankly and asked, "What kind of eyes are Byakugan?" "This, actually, is quite suitable for you." Dustless introduced the Byakugan in Naruto in detail. Fan Xinglu listened attentively. After a long time, she sighed and said, "I didn't expect there to be such a magical eye that can see the acupuncture points of the body. If it is really as magical as you said, it is indeed suitable for me." As her voice fell, Fan Xinglu rushed over again, hugged Dustless's neck tightly, and opened her mouth again. "No way, you want to do it again." Seeing this, Dustless was speechless. Did this girl really think of him as an ability extraction machine? "Of course, you have too many secrets. I can't wait to find out." Fan Xinglu's eyes were full of fascination. Dustless was like a big treasure. "I'm sorry, it is useless for you to continue sucking blood." Dustless pushed Fan Xinglu's mouth away and explained faintly, "Yuli's also sucked my blood several times. In the end, she only got hockey. In other words, no matter how many times you suck blood, you can only get one ability." Although Fan Xinglu was young, her understanding was not bad at all. She couldn't help but be disappointed. "Idiot." Dustless gently flicked the little loli's forehead and sternly scolded, "It is useless to have too many abilities. You can't use them all. You just need to practice a skill until you reach the level of familiarized proficiency." "That's true." Fan Xinglu nodded. Then, she looked at Wu Chen unwillingly. The cooked duck flew away. "What a pity." "Duck?" Hearing this, Wu Chen's face darkened, and then he asked snappily, "The duck you're talking about is me, right?" Boom! Outside the palace, a violent large explosion suddenly transmitted over. Dustless, Fan Xinglu, and the rest all furrowed their brows. From afar, the night sky was filled with all kinds of birds and beasts. There were huge flying dragons, fire birds from myths and legends, and some legendary monsters wreaking havoc. "Are you kidding me? We just defeated that Yamada no Orochi, and now there are so many monsters?" No matter how well Joubert had recuperated, he was still furious at this moment. His palace had been ruined over and over again. Although this was only a small country, he was still a king. How could he, the king, put his face in front of others? It is probably that beast creation magician, again. Didn't Claudia take care of him? Wu Chen gazed at all kinds of birds and beasts in the sky. There were so many of them that he was dazzled. He couldn't tell exactly how many there were. "Leave it to me." Dustless gave Joubert a comforting look. After all, he was his future brother-in-law. If he could take care of him, he would. Dustless walked to the balcony and looked at the countless monsters in the sky. A mocking smile appeared on his face. "No matter how many there are, they are all trash." Suddenly, Dustless's hands flickered with extremely bright light. Countless lights flew out from his hands. Yasekani no Magatama. Whiz whiz whiz, thousands of golden light bullets pierced through the void and went straight to the sky. The light and shadow in the sky were spectacular, like a golden rainstorm. Bang bang bang, all kinds of magical beasts flying in the void were unlucky. Their bodies were smashed and their whole bodies collapsed. In just a short time, all kinds of magical beasts flying in the void disappeared. How is this possible? Gustav, who was quietly observing from a distance, was stunned. All kinds of magical beasts that he had created were destroyed in the blink of an eye. What a joke, is the other party a god? Yo, a cold and indifferent voice suddenly sounded by his ear. Gustav was suddenly startled. He turned around and saw that it was surprisingly dustless. His face twitched wildly. Observation hockey covered the area of tens of kilometers, and Gustav couldn't escape from Dustless's palm. Sir, please spare my life. I was just hired by others. If I knew that the opponent was you, I would never dare to accept this task. Gustav knelt down and admitted his mistake with a pale face. Your attitude is very sincere. Dustless looked at Gustav with satisfaction, and then said faintly, I don't want to talk more nonsense, but I'm going to see the person who hired you. Don't tell me you don't know, it's Nicholas Enfield, right? Yes, that's right. Gustav nodded wildly. Of course, he didn't dare to violate Dustless's meaning. Otherwise, his life would be lost. If he betrayed the employer, he would betray him. Anyway, his life is more important. About 10 minutes later, Gustav took Dustless to a remote suburb. There was a small wooden house hidden in the vast forest. Coincidentally, Dustless not only saw Claudia here, but also her parents. Chapter 78. Yo, the two of you. Dustless smiled brightly and spoke humbly. After all, they were Claudia's parents. I heard that you want to take Claudia away. Claudia's father looked at Dustless with hostility. What if I don't agree? Dustless frowned and said coldly, the two of you seem to have misunderstood. I only asked Claudia to inform you. I didn't ask for your opinion. What benefits can we get? Claudia's mother asked coldly. She only cared about the benefits. Dustless couldn't help but look over. This woman was very beautiful. She also had golden curly hair. Her appearance was somewhat similar to Claudia's. Her temperament was noble and cold. She was like an ice goddess. There was no human emotion in her eyes. This woman was Claudia's mother, Isabella. She was one of the top operatives of the United Enterprise Consortium, Galaxy. Benefits? Hearing this, Wuchen frowned deeply. He felt a little annoyed and even annoyed with this woman. Claudia is your biological daughter. Do you want benefits from me? Dustless raised his voice and purposely emphasized the word, daughter. Mother, Claudia smiled sadly. The way Isabella was looking at her was no different from that of a stranger, cold and detached. Don't talk to me about the ridiculous kinship. The top operatives of the United Enterprise Consortium are all devoid of humanity. The so-called kinship has long disappeared. Isabella's eyes were calm. However, the more she was like this, the more terrifying it was. Claudia was her biological daughter. If she treated her daughters so coldly, what about other people? Just thinking about it sent chills down her spine. Forget it. Since it's like this, I'll take it that you sold Claudia to me. We'll be even in the future. Dustless was too lazy to talk nonsense. He said bluntly, in a few days, I will use absolute force to rule this world. Is it really possible to do such a thing? Isabella's emotions fluctuated, and her eyes were filled with greed. It's not suitable to talk about the details here. Let's go somewhere else. Dustless turned around and left. Claudia took the initiative to follow Dustless. As for her parents, they followed behind them. Claudia's beautiful eyes were filled with despair. She was probably the most pitiful person in the world to be used as a bargaining chip by her parents. Claudia, Dustless grabbed Claudia's little hand and gently rubbed it with a sunny smile. At least I'm by your side. That's true. Claudia smiled sweetly and then quietly rested her head on Dustless's shoulder. That's true. Claudia is right. Claudia's father, Nicholas, looked at this scene with a complicated expression. In his impression, his daughter was rarely this happy. Looking at Isabella again, she still had that cold expression on her face. Her eyes were shining brightly. She was probably planning for the future of the Milky Way, and she didn't care much about Claudia's departure. About half an hour later, in the palace of the Kingdom of Lusitania, a lot of important people gathered. Everyone was sitting in a circle, and everyone's eyes were on one person. He was as bright and eye-catching as the stars surrounding the moon. Without a doubt, this person was Dustless. Tomorrow, I will perform a large-scale illusion on this world and erase all financial groups on this planet except for the Milky Way. Facing everyone's gaze, Dustless said in a serious tone. If you can really do this, I'm willing to let you leave with Claudia. You can do whatever you want. Isabella, who was like a robot, had a smile on her face. She didn't know that when she said this, not only Dustless, but everyone was full of disdain. Isabella was indeed an excellent leader, but she was a failure of a mother. At that time, the other financial groups will disappear. Dustless didn't even look at Isabella. The resources of the other financial groups will be divided among us, right? Isabella looked at Dustless expectantly. Her tone was still emotionless. Divided among you. Dustless's face flashed a mocking smile. He sneered and said, You don't seem to understand the meaning of a man who is never content is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. The resources of the 5 financial groups and your Milky Way financial group almost cover all the resources on this planet. Are you dreaming? You want to go back on your words? Isabella stood up at once and stared at Wu Qin with her eagle-like eyes. Watch your tone. I have never gone back on my words. Of course, I will give you the benefits, but don't even think about the resources of this planet. Dustless snorted in annoyance. If this woman wasn't Claudia's mother, he would have slapped her away. I can give you half of the resources on this planet, and the remaining half. Dustless looked at Jorbert and smiled. It's yours. Ah. Jorbert was stunned. He didn't expect Dustless to be so generous. He opened his mouth and said half of the world. Isabella was silent. Looking at Jorbert, the dissatisfaction in her heart disappeared. Although her daughter was married to Dustless, Ulysses also had an affair with Dustless. It was her duty to take care of him. After a few more minutes of discussion, the division of the world was finally stopped. The family of Dustless's woman received great benefits. The next day, Dustless launched an attack on the financial groups. In the face of absolute power, they were as weak as chickens and dogs. They couldn't even withstand a single blow. Other than the Milky Way, the other 5 consortia had all been attacked by the calamitous quake star, and had been razed to the ground. Dustless had also left behind a devil's fruit for Joubert as a precaution, as well as other good stuff. In comparison, this brother-in-law of his was much more generous. As for Isabella, that woman was annoyed just by looking at her. It was already nice of her not to beat her up. As for the devil's fruit, about a week after the financial groups were destroyed, Dustless took Ulysses, Claudia, Sato Kirin, Sylvia, and Fan Xinglu away from this world forever. Chapter 79. Upon hearing that, Killer Bee's face suddenly darkened. Even though he was optimistic and positive, he was still angry because of Dustless's words. Dustless's words made him choke with anger. As the Hachibi's Jinchuriki, Dustless actually said that he can kill him in 3 moves. Nothing is more ironic than this. Ken Susanoo. The golden chakra covered his whole body, and a mighty and extraordinary tall body suddenly appeared. The ferocious eyes under the Tengu armor stared at the gloomy Killer Bee with murderous intent. You want to kill me in 3 moves with this kind of technique? Bah! Killer Bee sneered at the mature Kansusanoo. Although this giant has a strong visual impact, it's just a so-so for the Hachibi, and its size is only comparable to the Hachibi. Let's make the first move. The Hachibi in Killer Bee's spiritual world said. Dustless gave him an extremely dangerous feeling. It's definitely not as simple as it seems on the surface. Although this simple feeling comes from intuition, the beast's intuition has always been very accurate. Of course, I know. Killer Bee was very unhappy with Dustless's arrogance. He has to admit that if he only relied on himself, even if 10 of him stacked together, he still wouldn't be Dustless's opponent, and he would still be easily crushed. Ao ao ao, the harsh sound waves spread quickly like a tide, spreading to every corner, making people dizzy and temporarily deafened. Looking up, it's Killer Bee who has completely become a tailed beast, or it's Hachibi himself at this moment. Its huge body is comparable to Dustless's Kansusanoo, and it's even slightly bigger than Dustless's Kansusanoo, but Dustless's Kansusanoo is still a mature Kansusanoo. Boom boom boom, after a while, the ground suddenly trembled violently, and even some miniature mountains trembled slightly. Suddenly looking up, it was Hachibi controlling 8 tentacles to sweep quickly, rolling up bursts of smoke and dust, and pulling a deep trench on the ground. Woo woo, the Hachibi opened its jaws to the sky, and black beams of light converged. A high-speed rotating chakra was formed, and the hurricane that it threw out tore everything into pieces. Let's see how you deal with me in 3 moves. The Baijidama in the Hachibi's mouth was getting bigger and bigger, and the terrible omen of destruction was getting deeper and deeper. Invisibly, the entire cloud village was covered with a layer of shadow. Hachibi was very optimistic about the situation of the cloud village. Not to mention that the cloud village was destroyed by the previous battle and turned into ruins, the cloud village would not be spared from the next battle. Full of flaws. Looking at Hachibi, who was concentrating on condensing Baijidama, the corners of Dustless's mouth raised into a strange smile, and dense killing intent flashed through his Scarlet Mangekyo Sharingan. Watch carefully, idiot. This is the first move. Dustless stared at the ground under the 8-tailed tentacles. Blue veins suddenly appeared on his forehead, and the nerves all over his body were tense, like a volcano that was about to erupt. His whole body was shrouded in an ominous aura. Uchiha's Great Flame Formation. It hurts, it hurts. Damn it, what is this, a barrier? A giant red flame barrier appeared without warning beside the Hachibi and swallowed it, and the Hachibi who was condensing Baijidama was inevitably seriously burned. Looking at it, the Hachibi's whole body was burned black, and his whole body was filled with the smell of meat, and he was lying on the ground. Oh, just 1 move and you can't do it. It turns out that you can still move. Looking at the half-dead Hachibi lying on the ground moving again, Dustless, who recovered, shook his head and said in a flat tone, "Why are you asking for trouble? Just lie down obediently and wait for me to cast my technique, so that you can avoid the pain of flesh and blood." Are all Biju's brains so stupid? Staring at the tottering Hachibi, Wuchen sighed, and Susanoo moved. Its huge hands hugged the sky, and countless light gathered between its hands and turned into a straight ray of light that went straight into the sky. Tens of thousands of photons gathered between his hands, and Kansusanoo crossed his arms, and the light in his palms brought endless destruction. What does he want to do? Looking at Kansusanoo floating in the sky, Killer Bee suddenly felt uneasy. He could feel that the golden light between Kansusanoo's hands was enough to tear apart everything in the world. I don't know, but looking at this formation, it should be some kind of large-scale technique. The Hachibi's huge eyes stared at Dustless in the sky, and the area covered by the light in Kensusanu's palms was too large, making him uncomfortable. Kensusanu, Yasukani no Magatama. The golden light poured down from the sky, and the combination of Kensusanu and the glinting fruit was far larger than the Yasukani no Magatama, and its power was much more terrifying. Looking at the golden light pouring down from the sky, the Hachibi's mouth twitched violently, and he sucked in a breath of cold air. A human-like panic flashed in his huge emotionless eyes, and he was about to be dismembered. Pain, despair, as I said before, this was an unequal war from the beginning. Looking at the Hachibi with a dull expression, Dustless's indifferent and ruthless voice resounded through the sky, splashing a faint ripple in the quiet void. I can put a collar on you within 3 moves, it seems that I overestimated you. Now it's only 2 moves. In the face of such a dense offensive, the Hachibi's huge body became the target of destruction, and inevitably, flesh and blood flew everywhere, and his body was twisted into pieces. His flesh was badly mutilated, and blood dripped down. It was like purgatory on earth, and the pungent smell of blood filled the air, and did not dissipate for a long time. The Hachibi lying in a pool of blood completely lost consciousness, but he was still breathing weakly. Dustless used the Hachibi as a fighter, not to kill him. Looking around, the whole ground was like a sieve, and there were holes everywhere. It was a terrible sight. Chapter 80. It's been 5 days since Dustless destroyed the Cloud Village. Of course, although the Cloud Village was completely destroyed, Dustless didn't kill them all. He just separated the Hachibi from Killer Bee's body. Killer Bee's fate has been doomed since then. During this period, Zetsu came to Dustless once and gave him some things that Madara used in the past, such as his former weapons, including the flame fan of the Uchiha clan. All of them were handed over to Dustless one by one. The reason for this, according to Zetsu, is that he wants Dustless to completely become Uchiha Madara, become his shadow, and carry out Madara's plan. It's naturally impossible to become Madara's shadow, because this shadow will be replaced by the tragic Uchiha Obito in the future. Dustless can't become someone else's shadow, especially Madara. This thing is good, it's quite suitable for me. Looking at the Uchiha clan's flame fan in his hand made of unknown material, Dustless nodded slightly, and after looking at it over and over again, he was quite satisfied. During the half-month he stayed in the depths of the earth with Madara. Madara also taught Dustless how to control the flame fan. As one of Madara's weapons in the past, the power of this fan is naturally needless to say, its endurance is extremely strong, and it can even reflect Bijidama. During the 4th Shinobi World War, Uchiha Madara easily used this fan to reflect Uzumaki Naruto's mini Bijidama. Dustless-sama, your next plan. White Zetsu's lower body was inserted in the soil, and he tentatively asked Dustless. He was careful not to ask more. After all, what Dustless wants to do is not something he can interfere with. You mean my next plan is to go to a far place? Wuchen raised his head and looked at the distant sky leisurely with a mysterious smile on his face. Then, he closed his eyes and said calmly. There was an unknown meaning in his tone. Very far away. White Zu was stunned. His eyes flashed with surprise. He asked bluntly, your destination is? Dustless smiled as he looked at White Zetsu and gave a strange answer. It's so far away, but it's right in front of you, but you can't touch it. Well, that's enough, you go back and tell Madara that I will be back soon. Dustless waved his hand and interrupted White Zetsu who was going to ask him questions. Understood, Lord Dustless. White Zetsu didn't dare to talk nonsense. Madara was not here. Maybe if he said more nonsense, he would anger Dustless and kill him. His body simply sank into the soil and disappeared. Hachibi is under control. We have to prepare for the next step as soon as possible. With the flame fan tied to his back, Dustless looked coldly at the planet hanging high in the sky. The cold light in his mouth was obvious. The destination he just told Zetsu was the moon. The conditions for the birth of Rinnegan are too harsh, and according to Dustless's understanding of Madara, he will never let him have Rinnegan. Having Rinnegan means that Dustless can completely summon the Gedomazo, and with Dustless's strength, he can easily collect the 9-tailed beasts and resurrect the Jubi. At that time, there will be no share for Madara. Old man, let's see who will be the final winner. Dustless's face was cold, and his eyes were hazy. He naturally knew Madara's mind, but he wanted to use his power to pave the way for him in advance. Tenseigan and Rinnegan are completely at the same level. As for which is stronger and which is weaker, only the day of the real confrontation will know. If he has Tenseigan, Dustless has a 70% chance of winning against Madara. Although Dustless is not a member of the clan, and there is no possibility of the birth of Tenseigan, if it is transplanted, it can be used. After all, no matter what, the Uchiha and the Great Sword Tribe are still related by blood. The ancestor of the Uchiha clan, Indra, is the eldest son of the Six Paths Sennin, and Hagoromo and Hamura are brothers, so naturally, there is a subtle blood relationship between them. Just like Madara's Rinnegan, Uzumaki Nagato can use the same meaning. In any case, the blood of Kaguya flows in his body. Uchiha Madara, wait and see. With a cold snort, Wuchen turned around and left. They were about to attack the Dejianmu tribe on the moon. In order to prepare for a rainy day, some necessary preparations had to be done in advance. Wuchen was still clear about this. In the dark depths of the earth, Uchiha Madara was still shriveled, and his dry skin was particularly scary. He stared at the Gedomazo in front of him, and his old eyes flashed with a little fanaticism, and his rough and withered arms glowed with a little redness. Madara-sama, Hanzo the salamander of the Rain Village has a grudge against the Akatsuki, and I am afraid that he will soon attack them. White Zetsu's information pulled Madara back from his madness. Hearing that Hanzo had a grudge against the Akatsuki, his eyes suddenly shot a terrible light, and his thoughts turned quickly, and a plan was quickly formed. We don't need to worry about this matter, let nature take its course. Those kids are not deep in the world, and they will definitely not be able to fight that old fox. After pondering for a while, Madara said indifferently, and then asked, what's the situation in Konoha? After Dustless left, Konoha's situation has sharply deteriorated. Indeed. White Zetsu nodded and immediately said, due to the disappearance of Uchiha Dustless, we haven't seen him these days, coupled with the propaganda of the Rock Village, we think that he died in the battle. The third Hokage is currently sending Minato and his team, including Uchiha Obito, with the intention of attacking the Rock Village's supplies and breaking the current deadlock. There is also, White Zetsu's mouth stopped, and his eyes flashed with hesitation. He didn't know whether to say it or not, but finally chose to be silent. What's the matter? Madara frowned and looked at Zetsu coldly. Uchiha Dustless, he. Chapter 81. Looking at the hesitant White Zetsu, Madara's face became even scarier. His whole body was emitting cold air, and the breath coming out of his nostrils was as cold as ice. What has that kid been doing recently? Madara asked indifferently. In fact, he was also very curious about what Dustless was planning. Dustless has always given him the feeling of a cautious and careful person. It's absolutely impossible for him to practice the so-called dojutsu as he said before he left. Even if he did practice dojutsu, it was absolutely by the way. He took the Hachibi from the Cloud Village. As for the specific motive, I don't understand. Thinking of the scene where Dustless swept the Cloud Village, Madara said truthfully, without hiding anything. In front of Madara, no one has secrets to hide. His sharp eyes can see through everything and grasp the opponent's mind. This time, Madara was really confused. Hachibi. Hearing this, Madara lowered his head, and his eyes were constantly changing. Obviously, he was thinking about Dustless's intention of taking the Hachibi. His mind was filled with thoughts, and his thinking ability was also used to the limit. Although Madara once told Dustless that the Eye of the Moon plan was actually to collect the bijou and then resurrect the Jubi, it was obviously too early to collect the bijou at this stage, and it was easy to expose the plan. Dustless also promised him that he wouldn't rashly collect the bijou. Now that it was contrary to his previous statement, it really made Madara have to think deeper about the problem. Madara-sama, does that guy know? Impossible. Madara glanced at Zetsu, then waved his hand and denied, according to my recent observation of that kid, even if he knows the fundamental purpose of our plan, it's impossible for him to act rashly. He will only pretend that he doesn't know anything and lurk. Shaking his head, Madara was very confident. He believed in his own eyes. Although he didn't know what Dustless was planning to do with the Hachibi, at least at this stage, he was sure that Dustless was definitely in the same trench as them. Don't bother. Let him be. Madara, who couldn't figure out the reason, was relieved. He wasn't the kind of person who liked to waste his time. Since he couldn't guess Dustless's purpose, it was better to think about other problems. That Hanzo the salamander sure has guts. A mere ant dares to call himself a demigod, ridiculous. Madara's voice suddenly turned cold, and the cold air from his mouth condensed the air with endless killing intent. There was no doubt that Hanzo was afraid of the Akatsuki, but in fact, there was a deeper relationship, and that was the Rinnegan of Uzumaki Nagato. Thinking of this, Madara couldn't help but be speechless, cursing Uzumaki Nagato for being useless. Previously, it was Dustless who wanted the Rinnegan, and now someone else jumped in. Uzumaki Nagato was not Madara himself, and he could use the Rinnegan flexibly. He can only maintain the state of Rinnegan all the time, and naturally, it will inevitably attract the attention of others. That kid from the Uzumaki clan is really disappointing. Madara sighed helplessly. He had to admit that Uzumaki Nagato couldn't use the power of the Rinnegan. If he transplanted it to Dustless, he would be completely invincible. Madara's blood belonged to the Uchiha, and Dustless was also an Uchiha, so there was no reason why he couldn't use the power of the Rinnegan more vividly than Uzumaki Nagato. There are some techniques that Uzumaki Nagato can't use at all, and even if he uses them, it will consume his own lifespan. White Zetsu said, remembering the scene of Uzumaki Nagato fighting with Dustless. You don't need to worry about this kind of thing. Uzumaki Nagato is just a puppet standing in front of others. With his ability, I don't think he can even deal with the Kyuubi. Every technique and ability was different from person to person. Uzumaki Nagato was not as good as Dustless, and Madara didn't expect him to help. In the end, he still had to rely on Dustless and Obito. What's the situation with Uchiha Obito? Madara asked White Zetsu, and his tone was obviously more serious than when he talked about Uzumaki Nagato. This was the tragedy of Beitai. He's in Minato's team, and his teammates are Kakashi's ex-girlfriend, and the girl he's pursuing, a little girl named Rin Noera. White Zetsu reported truthfully, recalling Obito's information in his mind. Is that so? That's great. I was worried that the kid has no weakness, and I don't know how to control him. But it seems that I'm thinking too much. He's also a person who values feelings. In other words, he's a person full of loopholes. With a contemptuous smile on his face, Madara's eyes flashed with a touch of ruthlessness, and he immediately closed his eyes and began to think about how to make Obito completely despair in this world. On the other side, Dustless looked at the new world in front of him with amazement, and his clear pupils inevitably showed a strong curiosity. The unknown location was full of potholes of different sizes, and the ground was completely dry and rotten. Looking around, there were no less than thousands of them. There was no one for dozens of miles, and from time to time, cold wind whistled through. This was the place Dustless had been planning for a long time, the place where the Oaken clan lived, the moon. Sure enough, it's as desolate as I imagined. His boundless perception spread out in all directions. Dustless, who did not have any signs of life within a radius of 10 miles, was not surprised. The only people living on this planet were the Djianmu clan, who guarded the ghetto golem. Since the ghetto Mazo has been lost, the mission of your clan has come to an end. Next, let me complete the mission of your clan. Raising his eyes slightly, he looked around at the barren surface of the moon. Wu Chen muttered to himself expressionlessly. The moon was the most suitable place to be the graveyard of the Djianmu tribe. Chapter 82. The golden rainbow cut through the quiet sky, and the sharp sound of breaking the air pierced through the clouds. Looking at it, the golden rainbow passed straight through, shining in the dark night sky. Looking at the huge building in the distance, Dustless began to think about the information of the Oaken clan. His brain cells were working quickly, and this ancient clan with a long history was not as simple as it seemed. The pure bloodline of the Oaken clan, coupled with the pure Byakugan of the Hyuga clan, the Tensigan can appear. He clenched his fist slightly. To some extent, Hamura and Hagoromo were blood brothers. Uchiha and Hamura, as descendants of the Six Paths, were also distant relatives. However, after thousands of years of bloodline dilution, they were no longer related to each other. Dustless's surname was Uchiha, and he had nothing to do with the Oaken clan. The current situation is to first obtain the bloodline of the Oaken clan. As for the Byakugan, Dustless didn't think much about it. Rice should be eaten one bite at a time, and the road should be taken one step at a time. He still knew such simple things. Without the bloodline of the Oaken clan, even the pure Byakugan would be useless. Uchiha Madara will soon enter the kingdom of heaven, and the ghetto Mazo will be ownerless at that time. Even if Uzumaki Nagato has the Rinnegan, he won't need it. It seems that I can borrow it. Uchiha Madara used the ghetto Mazo to cultivate Hashirama's cells, and Dustless could also use the ghetto Mazo to cultivate the Oaken clan's bloodline to improve himself. He could choose a step-by-step method, and gradually implant the Oaken clan's cells in his body. Although this kind of thing was up to fate, and the probability was even lower, since the last time he implanted the power of Hashirama and the glint-glint fruit, he unexpectedly felt the power of nature, and Dustless's worries disappeared with the wind. Maybe a miracle could happen again. That's the gathering place of the Oaken clan. Looking at the giant town that rose from the ground in the distance, Wu Chen was slightly stunned. After a short period of absent-mindedness, he came back to his senses. Perhaps no one would have thought that there would be a human town of such a large scale on the desolate moon. Seeing that he was getting closer and closer to the town ahead, Dustless slowed down. He put on the clothes of the Djianmu clan that he had prepared and calmly entered the city. The ancient buildings gave off an ancient aura. It was as if he had returned to the world thousands of years ago. The world that entered his eyes was filled with the traces of time and was filled with the smell of decay. After entering the town, Dustless's gaze inevitably spread out, taking in everything around him. The world in his eyes was actually no different from Earth. On both sides of the street, there were people doing all kinds of business. The people passing by sometimes showed kind smiles, and sometimes they were noisy like peddlers. There's nothing different, Dustless thought to himself as he swept his gaze past the people passing by him. He had originally thought that the people of the great Djianmu tribe were like the great Djianmu hermit, with jade hooks under their necks. Now, it seemed that Dustless had thought too much. None of the people passing by him had jade hooks. It seems that in the future, although the great Djianmu hermit will be a branch family, it should belong to people with extremely high bloodlines. Slightly relieved, Dustless's anxious heart also relaxed. His expression was much more natural. He was really afraid that the great Djianmu tribe was really an anomaly, and that they had strange unknown means to discover him, an intruder. But, what's with the fear in the depths of these people's eyes? Dustless's clear and wise black eyes swept across the crowd around him. He was unusually puzzled. Even if they hid it well, he could still clearly see the fear in this group of people. Even if they wanted to appear very calm. This is interesting. With a subtle smile at the corner of his mouth, Dustless calmly and confidently stepped into the inner part of the ancient city. Being in a foreign country really gave him a different feeling. The people who passed by Dustless all looked at him. Seeing Dustless's imposing appearance, their eyes couldn't help but light up. Immediately, they seemed to think of something and shook their heads regretfully. They looked at Dustless with pity. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly. Wu Chen was speechless. Black lines hung on his forehead. He wasn't an idiot. As a person who had lived 2 lives, he knew what it meant. It meant that he was born at the wrong time. In other words, it meant that he might be facing some unknown fatal danger. I just came to the moon, Dustless was extremely depressed and secretly complained. He didn't expect to be so miserable on his first trip to the moon. At the same time, he couldn't help but feel curious. Kid, come here. Dustless, who was very conflicted, was about to find someone to ask when an old man with a face full of wrinkles pulled Dustless into an empty alley. Sensing that the old man who pulled him was not hostile, Dustless didn't struggle. Old man, what do you mean by this? Looking at the old man who grabbed him with an unfriendly gaze, Dustless said in a cold voice. Immediately, he looked at the old man's wrinkled face and his clothes had many patches. His eyes flashed with a touch of understanding. At first glance, he knew that this old man wasn't doing well. I don't have anything to give you. Shaking his head, Dustless said in a bad mood. This old man obviously regarded him as a fat sheep waiting to be slaughtered. I didn't expect you to have anything, the old man with a dirty face ignored Dustless's words. Looking at Dustless's gorgeous clothes, especially the clothes he was wearing, a touch of surprise flashed on his old face and asked, Little brother, what is your name? My name is Uchiha. My name is Dustless. Suddenly realizing that something was wrong, Dustless's voice stopped abruptly. He suddenly remembered that he was on the moon at the moment, not the Earth. On the moon, there is only the surname of Dajianmu, there is no other surname. Your name is Dustless, the old man nodded, there was no surprise. No one would have thought that one day the moon would be invaded. He just looked at Dustless and sighed, a touch of pity and sympathy flashed in his old eyes. I advise you to hide. It's a pity, it seems that it won't be long before those crazy people dig out your eyes. Chapter 83. So far, there is only the Otsutsuki clan on the moon, but after thousands of years of development and extension, the bloodline will inevitably fade, divided into the main family and the branch family. Just like the Hyuga clan in Konoha, there are primary and secondary. The leader of the entire Otsutsuki clan is naturally the main family, and the branch family with impure bloodline naturally has to bow down to the main family. It is not necessarily that the branch family's bloodline is impure. After all, heredity is such a thing. Tonari later, although he belongs to the branch family, his bloodline is extremely pure. Are you a member of the branch family or a member of the main family? Looking around, the old man with a dirty face looked at Dustless and asked in a low and careful voice. Dustless was slightly startled when he heard this, and immediately gritted his teeth and said, I am a member of the main family. Is that so? Since you are a member of the main family, you should run away as soon as possible. The old man waved his hand, and there was a trace of pity in his words. Run away. Dustless's mouth twitched, and his face was full of speechlessness. He came to the moon for the Tensigen, and now he hasn't got the Tensigen yet, how can he go back? The Tensigen must be obtained by Dustless. Is it possible that... A bright light suddenly appeared in his eyes, and Dustless suddenly remembered that because Uchiha Madara obtained the Rinnegan, he directly used the summoned beast to steal the Geto Mazo, which led to the conflict between the branch family and the main family because of disagreements. Don't ask too much, the disagreements between the branch family and the main family have long been known to everyone. As a member of the main family, there should be no reason for you not to know this. I am afraid that the internal strife of the Otsutsuki clan is not far away. The old man smiled bitterly and had to sigh that the world was unpredictable. The Otsutsuki clan, which has been glorious for countless years, is likely to be destroyed in the hands of its own people because of internal strife. Regardless of Dustless's thoughtful face, he walked away in loneliness. It seems that the current Otsutsuki clan is in a period of serious disagreement. There is no internal strife, and the branch family hasn't destroyed the main family yet. The serious disagreement is undoubtedly the different attitude towards the Geto Mazo. Although it is unknown who stole the Geto Mazo, there is no doubt that it is definitely a ninja on the earth. The branch family's opinion is simple and straightforward: directly use the Tensigen to destroy the earth, and completely destroy the earth. In this way, no matter who the Geto Mazo falls into, it will be useless. The Zone clan naturally didn't wish for such a thing to happen. They hoped that the world created by the Six Paths Immortal could be preserved. Compared to the cold-blooded branch clan, they were naturally much kinder. The two clans were at odds with each other and refused to give way to each other. Naturally, there was such a tense situation. Looks like those bastards from the branch family really have wild ambitions. They're actually cold-blooded enough to dig out the eyes of their own kind, sucking in a breath of cold air. Wu Chen's face changed dramatically, and his eyes kept changing. There was no doubt that digging out the eyes of the same race must be to create the Tensigen to destroy Otsutsuki's family and the earth. No wonder the old man told me to run. It seems that the reputation of the Otsutsuki clan is good. Otherwise, the old man wouldn't remind me to hide. Staring at the old man's bent back, Dustless nodded, and immediately the corners of his mouth lifted into a cold arc. In that case, I will detonate your contradictions in advance and let the Otsutsuki clan kill each other. Although the contradictions and differences of the Otsutsuki clan are very serious, the day of the civil war is indeed far away. What Dustless wants to do is to let them break out in advance, and then he will sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. Looking at the tallest building in the town in the distance, Dustless's eyes flashed with a fierce light, chakra surged, and the clothes of the Otsutsuki clan on his body were shattered, and he walked straight over. That is the headquarters of the Otsutsuki clan. Patriarch, the people of the branch family still don't agree with our proposal. They are still determined to use the Tensigen to destroy the earth, and instead accused us of misinterpreting the true meaning of the ancestor Himura. In the spacious and dim meeting hall, several members of the Otsutsuki clan reported to the person on the main seat. Their faces were restrained, and they didn't dare to cross the line in the slightest. They didn't even dare to raise their heads, and their faces were full of fear. That group of idiots, they misunderstood the true meaning of the ancestor. They have been blinded. A cold and emotionless voice sounded, and the cold sound waves spread out, making all the members of the Otsutsuki clan present shudder. The only difference was that this cold voice was obviously a woman's voice. It could be said that the affairs of the world were unpredictable. Who would have thought that the current leader of the great Jianmu clan, which had been glorious for thousands of years, was actually a woman? And just listening to this clear voice, she is only about 20 years old, extremely young. But Patriarch, the people of the branch family are too bold. They have secretly collected a lot of Byakugan. I guess they want to use it for fusion. The Otsutsuki clan member who reported before reported again. His tone was still cautious, and he didn't dare to be careless. If you underestimate the Patriarch in front of you because she is a woman, it means that your life has reached the end of your life. Humph, idiot, do they think that as long as they integrate with the Byakugan, they can give birth to the Tensigen and do whatever they want? Is this their choice? In that case, then by the order of the Patriarch, all of them will be executed. At this moment, an unusually frivolous voice broke the silence, and looking at the place where the voice sounded, it was Dustless who appeared with a mocking smile on his face. I didn't expect the current head of the Otsutsuki clan to be a woman. Looking at the woman on the main seat, Dustless was very surprised, especially the other party's beautiful white jade face. Dustless's eyes flashed with amazement. But what surprised Dustless most was not her beauty, but the strange irregular eyes in her pupils that he had never seen before. Impossible, how can she have the Tensigen? Chapter 84. Staring at the beautiful woman on the main seat, Wu Chen was rarely absent-minded. Of course, he was not bewitched by the beauty of the other party. Although the woman in front of him was really good-looking, with a curvy front and a white face that was as white and tender as mutton fat jade. Little girl, your looks are not bad. Wu Chen nodded his head slightly. He looked at the graceful and beautiful young lady and nodded his head quietly. Immediately, he spoke bluntly. His voice of praise resounded throughout the entire meeting hall. Clearly, Wu Chen had done so on purpose. Boy, you're courting death. After a while, several of Otsutsuki's family members rushed towards Wu Chen. Strangely, there was nothing in the eyes of these people. There was no such thing as eyes. In a formation that had never been seen before, they attacked Dustless from both sides. Worthy of being the direct descendants of Otsutsuki Himura, unfortunately, you are not him. It's you who are courting death. Kusanagi sword. A slender and sharp golden sword suddenly appeared in Wu Chen's hand. He stared at the several black shadows that pounced on him. His eyes were half squinted, revealing a cold light that could cut through everything. Then, a cruel smile appeared on his face. Don't go over, you are not his, Puchi. 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 Before the beautiful female voice fell, Dustless rushed out. The speed of the movement was completely jumping through space, the trajectory of the movement could not be seen at all, and in an instant, several people were directly killed. The pupils of the few members of the Otsutsuki family who had died had completely darkened. They didn't even know how they had died before they were beheaded by Dustless. You're courting death. Seeing her family members were killed by Dustless on the spot, the woman suddenly became angry. At the same time, her right arm rose forward, her snow-white wrist was half exposed, and 5 fingers spread out towards Dustless. Get over here. Chakra surged, and an unprecedented suction force suddenly erupted. The beautiful woman's face was full of anger, and her whole body was cold and isolated from the world. What a terrifying devouring power. This is countless times stronger than the devouring power of the 10,000 Mammoth Heavenly Attraction. Of course, it was because Uzumaki Nagato couldn't exert his Rinnegan to the extreme. Dustless's expression suddenly stiffened as an unprecedented suction force came from the front. He clenched his teeth to control his body's balance while his face turned ashen. The strength of this gravitational force was beyond imagination, and gravity was an existence that restrained light. Dustless was shocked to find that he could not elementalize at all. Stubborn resistance. Seeing Dustless struggling, the stunning woman suddenly sneered, a touch of disdain flashed through her snow-like Tensigen, and at the same time, her hand emitted a more majestic gravitational force. Dustless immediately lost his balance and was easily pulled over. How dare you kill my clansman? Die! So. A golden ray of light shot out from the beautiful woman's eyes, whistling through the air. It was aimed at the throat of the man who had been killed in one strike. Bastard! Looking at the golden beam roaring towards him, Dustless's face turned ashen. Due to the control of gravity, his hands couldn't form any seals at all. Kensusunu. The golden materialized chakra gushed out, blocking the oncoming golden beam for Dustless at the critical moment. The only difference was that Kensusunu was also penetrated, but the trajectory of the beam was diverted to avoid being directly hit. Dustless also escaped from the gravitational force. Damn, although Consusino was just a few bones, the beam that I haven't seen before could penetrate it. Dustless's eyes changed back and forth. His face was gloomy, with endless killing intent. He stared at the beautiful woman's eyes and said coldly, "In terms of power, there is no doubt that it's the Tensigen." Staring at the beautiful woman, Dustless said seriously, "You are very strong, the current head of the Otsutsuki clan." Taking a deep breath, Dustless felt an unprecedented pressure. The Rinnegan and the Tensigen were on the same level, but the girl in front of him was obviously not comparable to Uzumaki Nagato's control of the Tensigen. "My name is Otsutsuki Haruo." Her beautiful eyes coldly looked at Dustless. She could clearly see the majestic chakra flowing in Dustless's body, and the unusual power similar to her own. "You are not a member of the Otsutsuki clan." Otsutsuki Haruo's pretty face was cold. She remembered the missing Geto Mazo a few years ago. Looking at Dustless in front of her, she suddenly became furious. Her eyes were scarlet, and her killing intent roared out like a hurricane. "It should be you who stole the Geto Mazo, right?" Although Otsutsuki Haruo's tone was full of doubts, she was sure that the person who stole the Geto Mazo was Dustless. Because with the Tensigen, she could clearly feel that Dustless had an extremely huge and terrifying power in his body. It was the power of the six paths. To some extent, it is indeed me. Looking at the furious Otsutsuki Haruo, Dustless smiled happily. He has joined forces with Uchiha Madara, and he can control the Geto Mazo. Doesn't that mean that he stole the Geto Mazo? It's really surprising. Looking at Otsutsuki Haruo's Tensigen, Dustless's eyes were full of greed, and he said with enthusiasm, "It's worthy of the legendary Tensigen, the same level as the Rinnegan." Suppressing the excitement in his heart, Dustless's eyes deepened, and chakra swept out like a flood, setting off a strong and terrifying impact, directly shaking the Otsutsuki clan's meeting hall into ruins. "This guy's chakra is terrifying." Otsutsuki Haruo's eyes flashed. The inside of the Tensigen was much stronger than the Byakugan. The changes in Dustless's body were naturally like a mirror. She looked at Dustless cautiously. Since Dustless admitted that he stole the Geto Mazo, it means that he is likely to have the legendary Rinnegan. At the same time, a green chakra coat suddenly appeared on Otsutsuki Haruo's body, and her whole body was completely covered by the green chakra. It was exactly the same as Uzumaki Naruto's Kyubi chakra except for the color. It was the Tensigen chakra mode. This feeling made Dustless extremely uncomfortable. "We are all humans, I want to see what's so special about you." "You?" Seeing Dustless's aggressive eyes, Otsutsuki Hagoromo's pretty face suddenly swelled red, and she bit her thin lips tightly. Once upon a time, who dared to look at her with such eyes? "I tell you, the essence of the existence of this world is deprivation." Ignoring Otsutsuki Hagoromo's anger, Dustless exuded a huge aura. His eyes were like stars, and his whole person was a dazzling star. His stage was the entire moon. Looking at the past and present, there are many people who have the ability to annihilate natural enemies with a snap of their fingers. Otsutsuki Hagoromo and Otsutsuki Hagoromo, but when they had the strength to proudly laugh at the universe, they didn't see one thing clearly. It is because they stand above all living beings. It is because they have the power to surpass all living beings that the world will abandon the grudges in their hearts and willingly give them leadership. It is undeniable that Otsutsuki Hagoromo has indeed set the starting point for the universe, and can barely be regarded as the existence of the god of creation. Wuchen spoke tirelessly while his clear eyes shone brightly, and then his tone changed abruptly as he continued. But he overlooked the most important thing. The essence of human nature. Speaking of this, Dustless's sneer became more obvious. Yes, Hagoromo is indeed the creator of the world, but it is also because of this unprecedented creator that the world is more aware of the pursuit of power. The pursuit is competition, and competition will inevitably produce losers. Failure means the end of everything, and at the same time, it will produce the so-called evil. What do you want to say? Otsutsuki looked at Dustless with a strange smile on his face, and suddenly a strong uneasiness rose in her heart, especially the pupils full of magic, which made her even more anxious. Sure enough, a stupid woman, can't you understand such a clear truth? Looking at the puzzled Otsutsuki Hagoromo, Dustless said contemptuously. There is no so-called fairness in this world where the order is reversed. The essence is plunder. Otsutsuki Kagaya plundered the world, and his descendants Otsutsuki Hagoromo and Otsutsuki Hagoromo also plundered the world, and now I, Uchiha Dustless, am going to resurrect the Jubi, become a new Jubi Jinchuriki, and plunder the world. The scarlet eyes turned sharply, and a huge and horrifying materialized chakra gushed out. The huge golden figure enlarged, and the boundless chakra raged the world. What an evil feeling. Looking at the golden giant that shrouded Dustless, Otsutsuki Hagoromo said cautiously, and at the same time, her jade fingers were faintly filled with golden light. Child's play. Looking at the golden luster dancing on Hagoromo's fingers, Dustless said contemptuously, and immediately his face flashed with a touch of decisiveness, and suddenly shouted. Senjutsu, Kensusunu. Boom! A more majestic and oppressive chakra roared out, and the ground under Dustless's feet suddenly burst open, and the ground within 100 meters cracked and collapsed, revealing the omen of doomsday. Remember my name, Uchiha Dustless, the one who is about to take the Otsutsuki clan, including you. Chapter 86. Suddenly, Kensusanu's huge body grew again, and under the surprised gaze of Otsutsuki Hagoromo, its size continued to increase. Otsutsuki Hagoromo took a deep breath and looked at Dustless inside Kensusanu, and a flash of light suddenly flashed in his mind. Only then did he remember that some of the ancient books in the clan seemed to have recorded the surname Uchiha. Like me, he also has the blood of the Otsutsuki clan. Staring at Dustless inside Kensusanu, Otsutsuki Hagoromo thought to himself. The surname Uchiha is a direct descendant of Indra, so naturally, he has the blood of the Otsutsuki clan. A rebellious person who knowingly breaks the law. His heart was filled with unprecedented anger. Otsutsuki Haruo coldly stared at Wuchin, and his murderous aura penetrated his bones. Chakra raged, and the two have not yet fully engaged in a confrontation. The ground could not withstand the impact of the two chakra and broke like paper scraps. Buzz. 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 As if endowed with life, the ancient sound of Sanskrit slowly came out from Kensusanu's mouth, and the sky changed color, and the earth sank, and an unprecedented power of annihilation enveloped every corner of the moon. So big. Her beautiful eyes widened as she looked at the golden giant that blotted out the sky, and her beautiful face changed dramatically, and her heart suddenly sank. She subconsciously looked at the Otsutsuki clan behind her, and her beautiful face was extremely heavy. Otsutsuki Hagoromo himself may be able to resist Dustless's attack, but the Otsutsuki clan is a question mark. Now is not the time for you to worry about others, you'd better pray for yourself. Dustless saw through Otsutsuki Hagoromo's thoughts at a glance and said indifferently. However, at this moment, Kensusanu's huge body surface suddenly burst out with many dense green runes, almost covering the entire body of Kensusanu. What a powerful life force! Feeling the vitality contained in the green runes on Kensusanu's body, Otsutsuki Haguro was slightly stunned, and her pretty face was full of astonishment. Immediately, from her slender fingers, a golden light suddenly emerged. So, the golden light beam didn't stop. Instead, it continued to devour the chakra in Otsutsuki's body, turning into a beam of light hundreds of meters long. The Tensigin is indeed a dangerous eye. Looking at the ultra-long beam of light that almost cut the sky, Wuchin frowned slightly, and then looked at Otsutsuki Yurako's cold face without fear, casually curling his lips, without the slightest fear. Bring it on, brainless woman with big breasts. Die. Hearing this, the corner of Otsutsuki Haruo's mouth twitched fiercely. Dustless, on the left, and on the right, big boobs and no brain. Even a clay figurine would have 3 points of anger. The beam of light that was hundreds of meters long slashed down, carrying her raging anger. The narrow beam directly erupted down. Dustless's eyes couldn't help but light up, looking at the golden beam of light that was hundreds of meters long roaring down towards him. Maybe his glinting fruit also has this ability. Oh! The sharp katana of light was also raised, but compared with the beam of light that was hundreds of meters long, it was not worth mentioning. However, Dustless's expression was unusually calm, holding his hands in front of him, faintly looking at the beam of light that swept across. This is not the real, Golden Wool reincarnation explosion, and it is not enough to shake Kensusunu. Shaking his head, Dustless whispered, although this move is similar to Golden Wool reincarnation explosion, the power is too far away. After all, the real Golden Wool reincarnation explosion is enough to easily cut the moon. Otsutsuki Hagoromo is not Dustless, and the Otsutsuki clan is still here. She can't do this, she can't destroy as unscrupulously as Dustless. Bang! Kensusanu's katana of light stepped forward, splashing smoke and dust on the ground. Her thick arms held the katana of light, steadily and forcefully slashing forward with all her strength, without the slightest reservation. Whoosh! A huge golden wave of air rushed out from the tip of the katana, fearlessly rushing towards the beam of light that was hundreds of meters long. Boom boom boom. The two powerful forces inevitably came into close contact, and a huge spark suddenly soared in the void. After a long while, a destructive wave of air burst out, covering an unprecedented area that almost covered the entire moon, including Dustless and Kensusanu, who was blown back by this strong impact. Looking from afar, the orbit of the entire moon had actually been misaligned. Bastard, I actually lost. Dustless roared in bewilderment. Although the two moves cancelled each other out, he could still see that he was actually at a disadvantage in the previous blow. It's just a Suso. The corners of Otsutsuki Hagoromo's mouth raised a smug smile, coupled with her indifferent face. This scene was indeed attractive, but Dustless's face was dark, because the object of ridicule was him. I'll let you understand the horror of the Tensigen. Otsutsuki Hagoromo's irregular pupils emitted a dangerous light, and gently raised her hand, and the mountains within a radius of tens of kilometers burst open, and an unprecedented gravitational force spread out. Whoosh! At a glance, countless giant rocks floated in the sky one by one, slowly flying in the direction of Dustless, as if guided by the gods. All of them were fixed on the top of Kensusanu's head, spinning back and forth. Seeing this scene, Dustless's mouth twitched, and he almost spat out blood. This woman is estimated to be at the same level as Uchiha Madara, no, even stronger than Uchiha Madara. Looking at the dense group of meteorites above Kensusanu's head, Dustless opened his mouth, but the words that were on the tip of his tongue were swallowed back. Things have already ended here, and he can't say that he surrendered. It seems that I can only fight. His eyes fell on Otsutsuki Hagoromo, and seeing her playful expression, Dustless turned his head and couldn't help but snort angrily, and his eyes were bloodshot. Chapter 87. At a glance, countless meteorites floated in the sky, large and small. Some meteorites were only the size of gravel, and some were as large as a mountain. They completely ignored the so-called law of gravity and floated in the void so easily. The sky full of meteorites filled the endless void, leisurely and calmly circling above Kensusanu's head. Controlling gravity, is this the ability of the Tensigen? Or is this just one of the many abilities of the Tensigen, one of the most insignificant abilities of the Tensigen? Dustless raised his clear eyes slightly, and the scarlet Mangekyo Sharingan stirred up faint ripples. Looking at Otsutsuki Haruo, whose silver-white hair was like a fresh waterfall, Dustless frowned slightly, then raised his eyelids slightly, and the streamer in the corner of his eyes vaguely glanced at the group of meteorites, and then dispersed. His emotions were extremely calm, and there was no fear at all. For the sake of the same ancestor, call out the ghetto Mazo, and I will spare your life. Staring at Dustless, seeing that Dustless was as indifferent as a rock, a touch of indifference flashed in her beautiful eyes, and then she manipulated many meteorites floating in the sky to land around Kansusanu, and countless deep pits suddenly appeared on the ground, and dust flew everywhere. Didn't I say that the reason why I stole the ghetto Mazo was to resurrect the Jubi? Stupid woman, you are still so naive, and you want to use your mouth to make me surrender. Dustless's delicate face showed ridicule, and the curve of his mouth was even more disdainful. He looked at Otsutsuki Haruo with a sneer, and the contempt in his eyes was undisguised. Dustless didn't think that Otsutsuki Kagaya's face was big enough for Otsutsuki Yoroku to let him go safely. The so-called not letting him die was probably imprisoning him on the moon forever. Dustless could see that Otsutsuki Haruo was very interested in his jutsu, especially in the body structure. There's a path to heaven, but you don't want to take it. There's no door to hell, but you're throwing yourself into it. Since you want to die so much, I'll fulfill your wish. Her phoenix eyes glared at Dustless, and under the Tensigan chakra mode, Yuro's eyes flashed with anger, and she waved her hand down, and countless giant meteorites floating in the void flew towards Kansusanu. Boom boom boom. The boundless meteorites fell like a dense rainstorm. Although Susanoo also tried its best to resist, smashing the meteorites close to it into ruins one by one, but due to the number of meteorites being too dense, Susanoo was still buried deep inside. Bang, 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 huge chunks of the mountain fell from the sky and piled up. In just a few breaths of time, it had formed an unprecedentedly large and vast mountain range. Seeing that Dustless was buried by dustless meteorites, Otsutsuki Haruo's face was filled with anger, and her undulating chest finally calmed down. Her white and tender hand brushed the messy hair beside her ear, and she breathed a sigh of relief. It seems that he's finally decapitated ka. Just when Otsutsuki Haruo thought that Dustless was killed, the ground under her feet quickly cracked open, and a golden light gushed out from the ground and stopped in midair. Dustless's right calf suddenly flashed with light, and the golden brilliance instantly shrouded and gathered. Light speed kick. Otsutsuki Haruo calmly looked at the heavy blow that was roaring towards her. Her beautiful face was expressionless, and her temperament was elegant and refined. She didn't put the golden light in her eyes at all. A mere ant wants to shake the heavens and the earth. You're overestimating yourself. Otsutsuki Haruo didn't dodge, and stood indifferently. Her whole body emitted an emerald green defensive energy shield, protecting her inside, directly ignoring the heavy blow that was roaring towards her. Boom! Dustless's foot fell, and the ground suddenly trembled. Countless cracks could be clearly seen, and the ground quickly collapsed. However, the green defensive wall was safe and sound, especially the hardness that came from his foot made Dustless frown slightly. Looking at the unscathed emerald green defensive wall, he quickly turned into light and opened a distance. What a hard turtle shell! Gently raising his gaze and looking at the unshakable defensive barrier in the distance, Dustless raised his brows slightly, and his eyes were full of caution, muttering to himself in his heart, what a tricky ability. Dustless still clearly remembered that in the future, Otsutsuki Haruo had the ability to control the truth-seeking ball. In front of him, Otsutsuki Haruo seemed to be born with the Tensigan, so there was no reason why she couldn't operate it. Whoosh! Just as Dustless was pondering, Otsutsuki Haruo completely activated her defense and turned into a hurricane. When Dustless raised his head and realized that it was her, she had already appeared beside him. Because they were too close, Dustless could clearly smell the body fragrance coming towards him, and the extraordinarily light smell made him slightly absent-minded. He liked this kind of simple and elegant smell very much in his previous life, and he couldn't help but look at the small face close to him. This was the first time that Dustless observed Otsutsuki Haruo so closely. Her deep eyes were as clear as spring water, untainted by even a speck of dust. Her face was delicate and her facial features were well defined. Due to the intense battle earlier, one could faintly smell the fragrant sweat on her body. Is it possible that she wants to throw herself at me? Looking at Otsutsuki Haruo, Dustless's face was full of doubts, and he couldn't help but think in his heart, and suddenly he was enraptured. However, Dustless obviously overestimated his charm. A strange cool feeling suddenly gushed out from his eyebrows. Dustless was slightly stunned, and subconsciously raised his head, and the scene that came into sight made Dustless lose his ability to think in an instant. He saw Otsutsuki Haruo's hand pressing Dustless's eyebrows, and the cool feeling came from her hand. This guy wants to. Bastard! Dustless looked at Otsutsuki Haruo's indifferent face in surprise, and immediately saw her small hand close to him emitting a green light, and suddenly felt a powerful spirit invading his mind, and he immediately knew what she had made up her mind. Want to use the ability of the Tensigen to extract my memory? You are too naive. Chapter 88. Dustless's face was extremely ugly. Otsutsuki Higuro's idea was nothing more than wanting to use Dustless's memory to obtain the location of the Geto Mazo. After knowing where the Geto Mazo was hidden, he would immediately run to the earth and snatch the Geto Mazo. Don't even think about it. Dustless's body suddenly flashed with a dazzling golden light. His body lost its texture, and his whole body turned into a stream of light, exuding an unusually hot light. It's hot. Feeling the sudden increase in temperature, Otsutsuki Higuro subconsciously retracted her jade fingers. Her jade fingers were burned red, and she couldn't help but stare at Dustless angrily. Seeing Otsutsuki Higuro retracting her hand, Dustless also quickly moved away. You want to extract my memory? Go home and practice for 2 more years. Dustless looked at Otsutsuki Higuro sarcastically, and then said with great disdain. At the same time, he sighed that the Tensigen was worthy of being an eye of the same level as the Rinnegan, and some of its abilities were almost exactly the same. It seems that you know the ability of the Tensigen quite well. Otsutsuki Higuro frowned, looking at Dustless's omniscient appearance. The Tensigen seemed to be no different from his. Otsutsuki Higuro couldn't help but have doubts in his heart. Not to mention Dustless, who came from a foreign land. Even in the Otsutsuki clan, there are not many people who have really seen the Tensigen. Their understanding is limited to books, and they haven't seen what the real Tensigen looks like. More than just understanding, soon I will have the same eyes as you. Do you think it took me so much effort to come to this ghost place to look for trouble? Completely ignoring Otsutsuki Higuro, Dustless's mouth was swept with a cruel smile, and he had never seen this kind of hand seal before. Summoning Jutsu, Hachibi. Ao. The monster with 8 tentacles was suddenly summoned by Dustless, and its murderous roar resounded through the moon. The difference was that at this moment, Hachibi's eyes were crimson red. Obviously, it had been forcibly controlled by Dustless. The 8 huge tentacles danced strangely, roaring unscrupulously. The roar from the big mouth was deafening, and the endless impact spread out along with the roar. This is a tailed beast. Looking at the Hachibi's 8 tails, Otsutsuki Haruo was extremely surprised. Immediately, his beautiful eyes stopped on Wuchin, and his eyes emitted a burst of light. The prerequisite for resurrecting the Jubi is to gather all the 9-tailed beasts. As long as I leave this old man here, even if he has the Geto Mao Geto, it will be useless. Higuro was directly then Higuro, was Hachibi was directly ignored. Then Hachibi, then tamed to Higuro's. Not to mention that the tailed beast in front of her only has 8 tails, she can even tame the Supreme Kyubi. Now, let's destroy the Otsutsuki clan. Go, Hachibi. Woo! Ao. As Dustless's voice fell, the Hachibi controlled by Sharingan roared again. Chakra raged, and its huge body turned to look at the gathering place of the Otsutsuki clan in the distance. It opened its big mouth, and the evil energy ball was clearly visible. An unprecedented huge Baijidama was slowly taking shape, and it was about to erupt. "You dare to lay hands on my people, you are courting death." Haguro's eyes suddenly turned blood red. Her people were her reverse scale, and she regarded them as the most precious existence. Seeing the Hachibi's Baijidama in the direction of the Otsutsuki clan, her whole body was like the eyes of ice, and endless cold wind swept out from her body. Silver Will Reincarnation Explosion. The giant tornado, which was powerful enough to easily crush meteorites into pieces, swept quickly toward the Hachibi. Its power was destructive, and everything that came in contact with the hurricane was annihilated. This woman is really ruthless. Feeling the power of the giant chakra tornado, Dustless nodded secretly. If the Hachibi is hit, he will definitely die, and he will die completely. You have to look at the master before beating the dog. You want to kill my pet in front of me, where is my face? Looking at the tornado that was about to turn the Hachibi into minced meat, Dustless's face suddenly became gloomy, and his Manjikyu Sharingan flashed with an unusually hot luster, and chakra erupted, and a calm and powerful roar resounded between the heaven and earth. Uchiha Flame Formation. On the side of the Hachibi, who was preparing the Baijidama, suddenly a huge flame barrier was formed, and the blazing heat seemed to come from the furnace in the depths of the netherworld. It was extremely hot and extremely stable, protecting the Hachibi. Boom boom boom. The powerful and unparalleled tornado hit the flame barrier, and the two suddenly produced a huge explosion, and the flame barrier was inevitably torn into pieces by the tornado. But the fierce momentum of the Silver Will Reincarnation explosion was also turned into dust and completely subsided. Hateful. Seeing that his trick was easily broken, Otsutsuki Hagura stomped his feet in anger, and his eyes flashed with determination, and then he raised his white and tender little hand towards the Hachibi, and a powerful repulsive force erupted. Boom! The Hachibi, who was focused on condensing the Baijidama, was instantly sent flying out of thin air, and his huge body suddenly became as light as paper, and he was bounced hundreds of meters away by the strong repulsive force. Phew! A sharp sound of breaking the air sounded, and looking up, the huge Baijidama was rushing towards the Otsutsuki clan. Although the Hachibi was sent flying before, the Baijidama was successfully condensed and shot out. Seeing that the Bijidama was about to destroy the Otsutsuki clan, Otsutsuki Hagoromo made a prompt decision. His reincarnation eyes flashed with hostility, and a straight golden beam swept out. Golden Will Reincarnation Explosion. In the blink of an eye, the golden light beam extended for thousands of meters and caught up with the Baijidama, and under the sluggish gaze of Dustless, the golden light beam went straight towards the Baijidama. He could clearly see that the golden light beam directly penetrated the Baijidama and easily cut it. Chapter 89. The 1,000-meter-long golden beam was like an angry god's full blow, destroying the sky and the earth, splitting the flowing air into two. The Baijidama was easily split in half and burst open, setting off a huge explosion. Not to mention splitting the Baijidama of the Hachibi into two, it wouldn't be difficult to split the entire moon. Boom 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 boom, an ear-piercing and terrifying explosion suddenly shook the sky, and a huge wave of fire suddenly rose from the Otsutsuki clan's residence. Looking at it, the terrifying air waves were like waves of destruction, and the entire Otsutsuki clan was blown up by the dazzling golden light. The energy fluctuation that spread out was really too terrifying. Even Dustless was blown back by that super strong air wave by more than 10 meters. Taking a deep breath, Dustless looked at the huge fireworks over the town where the Otsutsuki clan lived, and he could clearly feel the unprecedented huge power. This is also the Tensigen, and it's more powerful than Otsutsuki Hagura's. Looking at the huge fire in the void, Dustless had an unprecedented bad feeling in his heart, thinking of the terrifying weapon created by the Otsutsuki branch family after the fusion of many Byakugan. His heart suddenly lit up, and he subconsciously looked at Otsutsuki Higura. Sure enough, Otsutsuki Higura's face was also full of shock, and even with a little fear, even if he hid it well, Dustless was still extremely keen to catch it. The depths of Otsutsuki's eyes were cold and desperate. Damn it, without my permission, who gave you the confidence, who gave you the right to fight among yourselves? Because of the violent anger, Dustless's face was distorted, and the hostility surging out of his pupils was like an evil ghost, and even the sharp screams of thousands of ghosts could be heard, and his murderous aura burst out. The civil war means that the Otsutsuki clan may end early, and Dustless's Tensigen plan may be ruined. For Dustless, who has no Otsutsuki bloodline, a large number of pure Otsutsuki clan blood must be exchanged for blood. We must stop those damned branch families. Their eyes quickly exchanged glances, but at this moment, Otsutsuki Hagoromo rushed out, giving up the crusade against Dustless, and swept towards the place where the explosion sounded like a hurricane. Seeing Otsutsuki leave, Dustless gritted his teeth and followed. There was something wrong with that enormous power just now. Could it be? Thinking of this, Dustless's face suddenly changed. There are two ways to give birth to the Tensigen. As for the origin of Otsutsuki's Tensigen, Dustless didn't know. The first way is to have the bloodline of Otsutsuki, and then transplant the pure Byakugan. The second way is actually the fusion of countless Byakugan, which is extremely powerful. The power of the moon is from this Tensigen. No wonder Otsutsuki's branch family destroyed the main family, so that's why. Dustless's eyes flashed with a flash of realization. He was afraid that the branch family not only dug out the Byakugan, but also stole the power in the Tensigen, which was formed by the fusion of countless Byakugan, so they dared to attack the main family. Humph, damn things, your clan is all mine. Without my order, you dare to start a war without permission. How dare you? His face suddenly changed, Dustless's murderous intent was revealed, and his eyes shot out a piercing cold light. He has already taken the Otsutsuki clan as his own. Now, without his order, these clowns dared to cause internal strife. It was really hateful. Without the Otsutsuki clan, Dustless wouldn't have the chance to obtain the bloodline of Otsutsuki. Thinking that his plan of using the Tensigen might be ruined, Dustless's speed became even faster, tearing and distorting the void along the way. Boom boom boom, inside the ancient city of Otsutsuki, the ear-piercing sound of explosions continued, and a wave of air completely turned this ancient city, which had existed for thousands of years, into a hell on earth. Looking around, the ground was full of broken corpses and rotten flesh, the ground was almost covered with bright red blood, and the stench of the corpses was everywhere. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was the depths of purgatory. A large number of Otsutsuki branch family members were ruthlessly killing the main family members. If they encountered an enemy that was easy to kill, they would directly use the Tensigen weapons to kill them. For a time, it became a one-sided situation. Stop it, you bastards! His voice was filled with boundless rage, as well as a towering killing intent. It was none other than Otsutsuki Ulua, whose face was filled with a sinister coldness. When he saw the members of the Zone clan being slaughtered in an instant, his chest was filled with unprecedented flames. His entire person was like a volcano that was about to erupt, exuding a strong sense of destruction. Higuro's pretty face was filled with anger, his eyes staring at the oval, stone-like strange weapons, and the fear in the depths of his eyes flashed away. You're really crazy. Taking a deep breath, Higuro's cold voice resounded through the sky, looking at the round stone with fear, but there was more killing intent in his eyes. Because those are the fusion of the Byakugan, creating so many Tensigen weapons means that these crazy branch family members slaughtered many of their own family members and used all their Byakugan to fuse. It's your family who misinterpreted the true meaning of ancestor Himura. The world created by Higuro Sennin is a failure, and the turmoil of the past thousands of years has already proved everything. Next to the Tensigan weapons on the ground, a middle-aged man walked out. This middle-aged man's face was pale, his eyes were hollow, and the corners of his mouth were particularly sharp, giving a very feminine feeling. When Otsutsuki Higuro saw this person come out, his eyes suddenly narrowed. The person in front of him was called Otsutsuki Higuro, the master of the branch family. It can be clearly seen that the master of the branch family, Otsutsuki Higuro, has a few black tomo on his chest. He belongs to the Otsutsuki clan with extremely high bloodline purity. In other words, people with high bloodline purity like him are the target of Dustless's hunting. Chapter 90. Otsutsuki Hagoromo looked at the Tensigan weapons on the ground with a pale face. Looking around, there were no less than 10, reaching a terrifying number of 15. Even if you dig out all the Byakugan of the branch family and the main family, it's impossible to integrate so many Tensigan. Otsutsuki Hagoromo's face was pale. Such a fusion requires a huge number of Byakugan. Each Tensigan weapon requires at least hundreds of pairs of Byakugan, or even thousands of pairs of Byakugan. And this bastard took out 15 at once. It can be seen how many Byakugan he plundered. So what? I just followed the true meaning of Ancestor Himura and destroyed the earth. Even if they pay with their eyes, including myself, they are willing to do so. The middle-aged man named Otsutsuki Hagoromo said indifferently. Even if his eyeballs were also dug out to make Tensigan weapons, he didn't regret it. Your main family can't understand Himura's true meaning at all. Putting aside the past thousands of years of war, this time the Geto Mazo has been stolen, which has explained everything. Even if Otsutsuki Hagoromo didn't have eyes, he could easily perceive the position of Otsutsuki Hagoromo. Bastard, it's your branch family who misunderstood the true meaning of the ancestor. However, now you even used the Tensigan to destroy the main family. You deserve to die. Otsutsuki Hagoromo said coldly. Her cold voice was like a biting cold wind, and even because of her excessive anger, the blue veins on her forehead could be clearly seen. This group of branch family members has completely fallen. The reason why they have so many Byakugan to make Tensigan weapons is because they stole the power of that. Otsutsuki Hagoromo's face was pale. What she said was naturally the Tensigan. It was the largest Tensigan, and also the source power that provided the moon's rotation. Since the death of Otsutsuki Hagoromo, the Otsutsuki Hagoromo who died thousands of years ago would dig out the Byakugan to supplement their power. Are you crazy? Otsutsuki Hagoromo scolded angrily. This guy is crazy enough to extract the Byakugan from the Tensigan that powers the moon. Nonsense, I am only following the wishes of my ancestors. After killing you, the last person of the Zong family, I will completely guide the moon to crash into the earth. This way, even if the Geto statue is lost, the Jubi will not revive. Yumi Otsutsuki's voice was unusually firm. As long as the moon crashed into the earth, the latter would naturally be destroyed. At that time, no matter who stole the Geto Mazo, they would inevitably die. You lunatic. Looking at Otsutsuki Hagoromo and the Tensigan weapons made by the Byakugan behind him, Otsutsuki Hagoromo's eyes showed unprecedented panic. She knew that she was no match for the 15 Byakugan harvesters in front of her. What should we do? We can't leave these branch family members alone. They've already been blinded. Otsutsuki Hagoromo looked at the branch family members who had been completely swallowed by the Byakugan, and her heart inevitably fell to the bottom. Her pretty face was full of resentment, and immediately a bitter smile rose from the corner of her mouth. The Otsutsuki family, which had been passed down for thousands of years, was going to be completely destroyed in her hands. You're really boasting. A mere specimen dares to boast about destroying the world. You're just a crazy child. An unusually harsh voice resounded through the sky, full of magic, and didn't dissipate for a long time. Looking up, It was a leisurely face. No one knew when it started, but it was already standing in the void, but its whole body exuded a cold chill, and its eyes were blood-red, filled with boundless raging intent. My future specimen, who gave you the right to start a war? A voice that seemed to come from the depths of hell resounded through the endless void. The cold voice with boundless killing intent made everyone, including Otsutsuki Hagoromo, stunned. Sage art, Yasukani no Magatama. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, boundless golden light roared down, and the dense number dyed the sky golden yellow. The dizzying number formed a large area of energy, and under the golden light, everything was forbidden. Damn it, looking at the innumerable dense numbers pouring down like a rainstorm, Otsutsuki Hagoromo swallowed hard. Although he couldn't see what was going on outside, he could still feel that he was locked on by thousands of dense destructive rays. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, such a huge range, such a dense number, mercilessly harvested the lives of the Otsutsuki family, almost slaughtering them, because most of these people's eyes were dug out to make tensigen, and they couldn't completely perceive it. This guy, staring at the cold face of Dustless, Otsutsuki Hagoromo was slightly stunned, and suddenly realized that Dustless chose to invade the moon from thousands of miles away, and now Otsutsuki Hagoromo did this, undoubtedly crossing his bottom line. Serves you right. Looking at the scattered branch family members, Otsutsuki Hagoromo had an indescribable joy in his heart, because it was they who used the tensigen to destroy the main family. Now retribution has come. Attack for me. The furious Otsutsuki Hagoromo roared, indicating to quickly manipulate the tensigen to attack Dustless and Hagoromo in the sky. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. 15 tensigen weapons immediately shot out dazzling rays of light, aiming at Dustless and Hagoromo. The power was extremely powerful, not inferior to the ultimate move of Golden Wool reincarnation. Insignificant skill. Looking at the light beam rushing towards him, Dustless's face was full of contempt, and with a disdainful attitude, his pupils looked at the light beam coming towards him indifferently, and without dodging, he crossed his arms in front of him. Poochie. The destructive light beam directly penetrated Dustless, but the place where it was penetrated only emitted a faint golden light, and soon the place where it was penetrated was restored, unable to hurt him at all. This kind of pure physical attack is ineffective against me. Chapter 91. Although Dustless can be immune to this terrifying physical attack, Otsutsuki Hagura can't be ignored. She is immortal, and she doesn't have Dustless's heaven-defying ability. Especially when Otsutsuki Hagura saw that it didn't work on Dustless, she used all 15 tensigen weapons to attack Otsutsuki Hagura. In just a few breaths of time, he was already in a sorry state, completely on the verge of defeat. These things are good, maybe I can use them in the future. Looking at the Otsutsuki clan's tensigen weapons on the ground, Dustless's face was full of yearning, and his clear pupils were full of undisguised covetousness. This kind of tensigen weapon may not be as practical as the tensigen, but its power is beyond doubt. If there is no such thing as Dustless, the branch family will soon use this to destroy the main family. I can't let her die. Looking at the defeated Otsutsuki Hagura, Dustless frowned slightly. Although this woman is a bit savage and ferocious, she also has the tensigen, and he can't let her die like this. Even if she is wrong, the tensigen is right. It seems that I have to use that. Taking a deep breath, Dustless's face was full of determination, and at the same time, his scarlet Mangekyo stared at the besieged Otsutsuki Hagura, and a strong fluctuation suddenly surged in the Mangekyo. A huge aura floated all over his body, and 2 bloodstains suddenly flowed out of the corners of Dustless's eyes. Chakra energy was obviously mixed with the chakra energy of the first generation. It is the brand new dojutsu born after Dustless merged with the cells of the first generation Hashirama, and it is also one of his biggest cards at present. Thank me, stupid woman, but let me use this ultimate ability. It's not without reward. After the matter is done, give me your tensigen, divine providence. After saying that, dark red blood suddenly flowed out of the corners of Dushless's eyes, and his pupils suddenly enlarged. Damn it, am I going to die? Looking at the roaring golden light beam, Otsutsuki Hagura's beautiful eyes dimmed. After a series of battles, there was no chakra left in her body, and the chakra that was born was not enough to save her life, and she will definitely die. Pucci, the golden light directly penetrated Otsutsuki Hagura's body, and pierced her chest directly, and then the light beam completely penetrated her body. This is, Otsutsuki Haguro, who thought that he would die, looked at the wound in surprise. There was no blood stain that should be there when he was injured. Instead, there was only a faint golden light, which was very warm. Not to mention the signs of life passing away, there was no sense of the most basic pain. I didn't die. Feeling that her whole body was filled with a warm halo, Otsutsuki Haguro was very surprised, and there was no joy on her pretty face, but she looked at Dustless in the distance in puzzlement. Because in the battle with Dustless, she used this strange trick to ignore any physical attack. Impossible, how can you not die? That guy was penetrated by the light beam of the Tensigen, how can he not die? Otsutsuki Hagura on the ground naturally felt the abnormality of Otsutsuki Hagura, and immediately screamed with endless disbelief and confusion in her tone. How can he not die after being penetrated? This seems to be the ability of that kid. Remembering that Dustless avoided the attack of the Tensigen in such a strange way before, Otsutsuki Hagura was surprised, and at the same time, her pitch-black pupils without eyes swept in the direction of Dustless. Including Otsutsuki Hagura's eyes, all looked at Dustless. TSK. It was discovered after using it once. It seems that this technique is full of loopholes. Seeing that both Otsutsuki Hagura and Hagura were looking at him, Dustless couldn't help but shrug, and then said helplessly, in fact, it was tantamount to admitting the two's thoughts. Why did he save me? Otsutsuki Hagura stared at Dustless with her bright watery eyes, and her hatred for Dustless in her heart gradually decreased, and immediately looked at the large bloodstains in the corner of Dustless's left eye, and her heart was particularly complicated, because she knew that it was caused by saving him, and obviously it cost a lot to save him. Don't thank me, just give me your Tensigen as a thank you gift afterwards. Seeing Otsutsuki Hagura looking at him with a complicated expression, Dustless touched his nose, and then smiled calmly, as if this was how it should be. You fart. Hearing this, Otsutsuki Hagura's mouth suddenly twitched fiercely, and her words were incoherent. Her good impression of Dustless disappeared in an instant, and her eyebrows were slightly raised, and she couldn't wait to slap Dustless to death. Obviously, Dustless caused her to be smashed into pieces, and the Tensigen was completely destroyed, so he saved her. Don't show such a surprised expression. Manjiku's Sharingan may not be as good as Rinnegan and Tensigen, but this iron rule doesn't seem to work on me. Dustless chuckled softly, and immediately his pupils suddenly narrowed, and the gaze reflected from the slits of his eyes was awe-inspiring and domineering. His whole body was shining, like a shining sword, showing its sharpness, and cutting the world. Sharingan is known as the soul portrayal eye. The darker the heart of the host, the stronger the desire for power, the stronger the eye power of the Sharingan will be, and the darker the heart will be. So it is called the soul portrayal eye. Touching his eyes, Dustless wiped the bloodstains from the corners of his eyes, and said in a deep voice, in other words, the more power it pursues, the stronger the eye power will be, and the same is true for the ability of the eye. It is precisely because of Dustless's supreme desire for power that his eye power is abnormally strong, and he has such a strange ability to give the ability of his glint fruit to others. Since you are about to die, I will tell you the ability of my left eye. Divine Providence, this is the ability of my left eye, and it can give any power in my body to others. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.